the city with the programs that we have and the recommendations that we have. And so we like to recognize all the employees that made this happen, Roger and his staff and many others that were involved in doing this, and really appreciate it because it's a win-win. It's great for the city, it's great for the community, and it's great for the trust as well. And we really appreciate that. So I'm here to present the award. I'll leave this with you today. It's the 2016 Trust Accountability Program Award. And with this comes a check for 5% of your liability premium, which a check was sent out earlier this year for $9,287.70. And that's just to show our appreciation and thankfulness for your partnership there. So congratulations, and I'll leave this with you. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brent. Good to see you. Item B, proclamation declaring Amateur Radio Week in Washington City to be on June 24th, 25th, 2017. If I may, I would like to read that proclamation. Whereas amateur radio operators are celebrating over a century of the miracle of the human voice broadcast over the airwaves, and whereas amateur radio has continued to provide a bridge between peoples, societies, and countries by creating friendships and the sharing of ideas, and whereas amateur radio operators have also provided countless hours of community services, both in emergencies and to other local organizations throughout these decades, and whereas these amateur radio services are provided wholly uncompensated, and whereas the city also recognizes the services of amateur radio's people also provide to our many emergency response organizations, including St. George Marathon, Cedar Games, as well as several other community events, and whereas the same individuals have further demonstrated their value in public assistance by providing free radio communications for local parades, bike-a-thons, walk-a-thons, fairs, and other charitable public events. And whereas the City of Washington recognizes and appreciates the diligence of these hams who also serve as weather spotters in the Skywarn program of the U.S. Government Weather Bureau. Whereas the ARRL is a leading organization for amateur radio in the USA, and whereas the ARRL Amateur Radio Field Day exercise will take place on June 24th to the 25th, 2017, is a 24-hour emergency preparedness exercise and demonstration of the radio amateur skills and readiness to provide self-supporting communications without further infrastructure being required now. Therefore, I, Mayor Kenneth F. Nielsen of Washington City, do hereby officially recognize and designate June 19th through the 25th as Amateur Radio Week. And item C, another proclamation declaring Constitution Week to be the week of September 17th to the 24th, 2017. Again, let me read this proclamation. Whereas the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of limited government in a republic dedicated to rule by law, and whereas September 17th, 2017 marks the 230th anniversary of the framing of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate it, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the use of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designated September 2017 through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Therefore, I, Kenneth Nielsen, Mayor of Washington City, do hereby officially recognize and designate September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week.
Thank you, Mayor. That's very appropriate. I appreciate those declarations. One question on the ham operators. Do you know if they're going to hold that event up to our park up on Highland Park, as they have in past years?
I believe they are, yes.
I would encourage the public. I know I would participate a couple times in just going up and watching, and they'll let you go hands-on and be a part of that. It's very, very informative and intriguing to watch those ham operators and how they communicate across the country with each other. So if that event is indeed up there, I'd encourage our community to go up and be a part of it.
There's an attached letter, and it says it's at the
Dixie ATC building at the
Oh,
airport.
at the old airport then. Okay, well, not quite as handy as our local park, but still go be a part of it.
They say it's going there because it's air conditioned.
It's a good
We
reason.
get the breeze to blow up there.
All right, thank you. Item 3, declaration of abstentions and conflicts. Anything to declare from the council? If not, we'll move on to item 4, consent agenda, board audit report. Consideration to approve the board audit report for May 2017. And a local consent, consideration to grant local consent for a bar located at 2400 Town Center Drive in Washington. Any questions or comments on those 2 items?
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Nice night.
Ellis and I.
Granger, aye.
IVI.
Thank you. Those are approved. Item 5, Power Board. Consideration to appoint members of the Washington City Power Board. As you all know, I like to have people on board serve a certain amount of time. 2 that were up were Daniel Clough and Mike Dinsmore, and it would be my recommendation that we ask them to continue again for another term. Any questions or comments on that?
Mayor, just so it's clarified that this new appointment's for a 4-year term, is that
Yes.
correct? These 2 have only served our first year. Our power board, just a newly appointed board, been in service for a year now. And so that's why these board members, they drew the short straws to only be 1-year terms. So we stagger those terms. And so I certainly would support you in reappointing those members.
It's nice to have them become as knowledgeable as they have to become in order to serve effectively on that board.
You okay with that, Daniel?
Is that I surrender?
I entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we reappoint the 2 members of our power board who are currently serving to another 4-year term. That would be Daniel Clough and Michael Dinsmore.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second.
IVI.
Granger, aye.
Ellis and I.
Nice and aye.
Turek, aye.
Thank you. And thank you, Daniel and Mike. Item 6, bid award, consideration to award the bid for a street sweeper. Mike Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. On June 5th, we publicly opened bids for the purchase of a new street sweeper for the city. We received 2 bids, one from Legacy Equipment, the other from Cade Equipment. Legacy Equipment was an Elgin sweeper, which that's what we presently run. And Cade Equipment was a Johnston sweeper. They're both pure vacuum sweepers. That's what our spec was called out to be. Legacy Equipment put a bid in at $236,431,000 with a $30,000 trade-in. So with the trade-in, that would be $206,431. They were the low bid on this. Cade Equipment was $241,210. They did not want to take ours in a trade-in, so we had a 0 trade-in. So that
I
was,
thought, so we're trading in our current?
we are.
Because I thought we were going to keep it.
We were going to until we got a $30,000 trade-in. We figured we would maybe get $10,000 trade-in on it. And also with this, in our bid documents, we actually put in a guaranteed buyback after a 5-year period. And Legacy Equipment, we have a guaranteed buyback for $92,000 buyback after 5 years worth of use. And the Cade Equipment was $55,200 on their guaranteed buyback.
Now, that's an option of our choice, correct?
Yes. Yeah, we can run it longer than 5 years, but what we
If
found
we
is,
if we want to move on that option, that 5 years, they would buy it back.
correct. So with that, staff is recommending that we award the bid to Legacy Equipment for $206,431.
Mike, is this machine almost identical to our current machine?
Yeah, it's pretty much identical, just some emission differences on the motors, a little higher horsepower to compensate for the emissions that are on it.
How long have we had the current machine?
8 years.
8 years.
So It seems to me that at 30 grand, it wouldn't hurt to keep it as a backup.
It cost us $39,000 to keep the existing sweeper running this year.
Okay.
And we just had a major breakdown on it. That's probably going to run about $8,000.
Okey doke. That said, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and approve award the bid for a street sweeper to Legacy Equipment for the cost after trade-in at $206,431.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Fellas and I.
Nice night.
Turek, aye.
All right, thank you, Mike. Item 7, preliminary plat. Consideration to approve the preliminary plat for Cobblestone subdivision, Phase 2, located approximately 24 West, 3800 South. Applicant Lester Jessup.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, the applicant's requesting approval of the preliminary plat for the Southern Vista. Nope, sorry, I grabbed. For the Cobblestone Phase 2 subdivision, the applicant is proposing 22 lots on an area coverage of 9.8 acres. Zoning designation at this particular area is the single-family residential 15,000 square foot minimum, or R115 zoning designation as we refer to. The surrounding zoning is R115 to the north and east, agricultural 20-acre minimum to the south, and then St. George City to the west. The preliminary plat approval request is in follow-up to the recently approved R115 zoning of this particular parcel. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. Request meets the subdivision requirements and other ordinances at this particular location. Staff reviewed the request and recommended approval to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission reviewed it at a public hearing at their May 17th, 2017 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the Cobblestone Phase 2 subdivision onto the City Council with the findings and conditions. The only extra condition we put on it was condition number 12, was that the numbering needs to coincide with the subdivision above them, and we'll make sure that that gets taken care of by the time we get to the final plat. It's just the numbering isn't in good sequence and it jumps too far, so it causes confusion. So but with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions the council might have.
Any questions for Drew or the applicant?
I'm assuming, Drew, those detention basins will be raised up
Landscape.
appropriately, especially where they're against the streetscape there. And
Yeah, I think they're going to match, especially on that western boundary there where the bigger ones are. They're going to match
the
the
existing,
existing ones. And
and that's a
that's
nice looking.
pretty nice landscaping on that west boundary, so.
I think what we see is R15, isn't it? Is that R15?
That's the zoning on it, yeah.
Any questions again? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of the preliminary plat for Cobblestone subdivision Phase 2 at approximately 240 West 3800 South.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Nice night.
Fellas and I.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
That is approved. Item B, consideration to approve the preliminary plat for Southern Vistas subdivision located approximately 4400 South Washington Fields Road. Applicant Mark Newman.
Thank you, Mayor. As again, a request for a preliminary plat. This applicant is proposing 30 lots and the area coverage is 13.698 acres. The zoning designation at this particular location is the single-family residential 10,000 square foot or R110 zoning designation. And it also has the single-family residential 15,000 square foot or R115 That is the particular 2 lots that you see on the west or the left-hand side of your exhibit there on the other side of Washington Fields Road. The surrounding zoning to these parcels is open space to the east, Ag 20 to the west, the Stuckey Farms PCD to the south, and R18 to the north. This preliminary plat approval request is also in follow-up to a recently approved zone change of R110 and R115 on this particular parcel. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request once again meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances. Staff requested a recommendation of approval, and the preliminary plat through a public hearing was viewed by the Planning Commission on their May 17, 2017 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the Southern Vista subdivision based on the findings and subject to the conditions to you, the City Council. And there were a few extra items on here. Number 12, 13, and 14, I'll just reference them real quick. The geotech report is inconsistent reports on adjacent developments and needs to be looked into. Number 13, the pavement design recommendations for Washington Fields Road will be required to match the minimum standard of 5 inches asphalt over 10 inches of base course unless other sufficient road section is proposed and approved by the Public Works Department. And finally, condition number 14, abandoned storm drain line running through the property must be removed in its entirety during construction of the project. And those are the 3 items added by the Public Works Department for this particular subdivision. Once again, I'll be glad to answer any questions that the council might have.
So this is adjacent to Iron Horse, right?
Yes, it's in between Iron Horse and the Meadows at Stuckey
So
Farms.
it's not
That's that
Ron
last
Horse.
piece. It's not, but the only way to get into it is through Iron Horse. I know we thought that they might have asked and someone may have not wanted to do it, like the one we just had. The cobblestone's been there for a while and the people were fine with making a cobblestone number 2, even though it's a different developer, but this one has, maybe they didn't ask. I think it might have just been a developer. So Southern Vistas.
So I guess maybe the only heartache that I really got on it is there's no real, that BLM parcel off to the east, at some point, that's going to go through an RP&P or something and come back, and there's no real direct shot access into it. That might be happening all night.
Councilman Bellison
How
gave
many,
us all
how many jars did you hand out? We'll just count the
some jars of
pots and
strawberry that have been frozen.
I
So when you hear the
supported
pop,
I
You're
supported
good.
my niece.
You're good. Yeah, but in hopes, if it does go, the BLM does turn. I mean, the city, that might be an option for us to put in a park area. We'd really like to have probably accesses from the subdivisions. All the
For
subdivisions.
That's fine, but it's, I mean, it's a 40 or 60 acre parcel, so you're gonna want, greater access, and it looks to me like
We have
Maybe Iron Horse Drive is the only
3 or
one
4
runs
other
in.
accesses going into it from all the other subdivisions around, if that helps you. Iron Horse has a stub into it. Sugar Plum in the Fields has a stub into it.
Well, this one's got a stub into it.
Yeah, that's what I say. I think that's what he's saying is he's worried it might be the own, but there are,
and Stuckey Farms has a stub into it, but you gotta go in and.
well, they don't. You'd have to go through Warner Gateway subdivision will have a stub to it. Stuckey and the Meadows won't have one.
Yeah, but Stuckey leads into this parcel, which leads.
Right,
into
which will lead into it, yeah.
So, I mean, there's ways to get into it. It's just, there's no main
Thoroughfare coming in.
main access, and even Iron Horse, or not Iron Horse, but Sugar Plum. Sugar Plum
Isn't there
doesn't have a
one?
direct access either because it comes and ties in Iron Horse.
Yeah.
And you got to get out of Sugar Plum, you got a 4-turn jog to get out of it on Washington Fields Road. So
Well, maybe what the hopes will be and probably what will come of it is up north off of 3650. They'll come in from the north if there's going to be a main road that will tie into 3650.
Are there trail systems in the BLM property?
Or what?
Trail systems in there that are nearby?
No, I mean, they haven't put any in that I'm aware of down in this area.
Yeah.
It's not, it's just a big flat area that has protected, well, it's being worked on there's a poppy that's protected, but none of them, they're on the other side of Highway 7, so. Possibly removing that, but
So you would have to cross to get to the Poppy area because they're not gonna open that
On the
up
southern corridor, it kind of isolated this parcel and it separated it from the,
from the Poppies.
from the property.
from the protected area.
So that's why I say, I assume it's going to get deemed excess at some point, or
Yeah, it'll be either sold off or I know we've kind of peeked at it a little bit for some future stuff maybe, but we'll wait and see.
before it gets deemed excess, why don't, as a city, why don't we go try to get it, the RPMP, or do we have to have a reason to, or what?
Yeah, once you're granted an RPMP, you got a shot clock that begins for development. And so,
This is that area though, that group was asking for that park, so it may fit exactly.
It's close. And we're short
Certainly
of
could
parks out there,
possibly
too.
be a possibility for it.
I think it's a great location for that in the future, so.
So if there is a shot clock, and I know this is off the subject of the preliminary plat, but what do you have to do to perform on that? It doesn't have to be fully improved.
yeah, you'll have to, so as part of the application on the RMPP, we have to actually submit plans to them to show the development. And then we've got, and I can't remember off the top of my head what this period of time, I think it's 5 years. Maybe in fact, I don't even know if it's 5 years, but anyway, it's a period of time. Of course, they allow you to perform, so it's going to be a few years. And then you have to meet those plans, or you've got to come in for a revision, or they can pull it back, or you pay full value for it. So, yeah, we have to submit plans, and they'll expect it to be built accordingly.
Do we have, is this on our radar?
It is on our radar. We haven't got plans for the park yet, but we like, we talked before, we're seeing large growth pressure on the east side of Washington Fields. Of course, in the Southfield area as well. And so we really need to get some amenities. We've looked at not only this parcel, but we've also looked at a parcel just down from the Warner Valley Southern Parkway. And again, a lot of this is either BLM, and some of it is also detention basin. Some of it's school institutional trust land as well. And we've actually had some discussions about maybe eventually using several of those lands for recreation. But that's the only challenge with an RPMP, is we just have to be kind of prepared to move, and we're not quite there yet.
Well, I don't think this piece is quite ready for us yet. It's still in your critical habitat designation, so it'll probably be a little premature at this point to even move forward.
On number 12, the geotech report is inconsistent with reports on adjacent developments. Needs to be looked into. That's pretty vague. What exactly does that mean?
This means that because of the properties to the north, they've had some geotech coming in about certain soils probably. And this one's not consistent with that. They're just wanting to make sure that there's a reason it's not consistent. It's not just they just want to make sure they've
Is
done
it
their
a
due
clay
diligence.
issue? Or?
Well, I think this area has more, and Mike, you can stop me. I think it's more collapsible soils. And that's what this whole stream has been, or they've had to add a lot of water to it, dig it out, bring water in. It's not as much clay issues as it is collapsible, too dry.
But you look at that over the years, it's been kind of a silt gather. It's been a settling point. So where
And that's the problem, is that silt doesn't, it kind of,
Exactly.
it's a fluffier. That's why when you walk out there, it just poof, poof with, feels like you're walking through brown powdered sugar in some places. So
A lot of time, the geotech reports are inconsistent in what they feel is the right mitigation
Yeah.
for the soil.
So they're just wanting to make sure they've done their due diligence. Public Works just saying, hey, be aware that we've, people on the north of you and south of you have had report X, and you're bringing me report Y, and it's a little different. We just want to make sure that they've done their, and that's really, and during construction drawings, they'll address that at that time. So we're just throwing out a, saying, hey, you really want to look at this.
Any other questions or comments?
Unless there's any other discussion, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for Southern Vista subdivision, located approximately 4400 South Washington Fields Road.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second.
IBI.
Granger, aye.
Fellas, tonight.
Nice and I.
Turek, aye.
Thank you. That is approved. Item 8, final plat. Consideration to approve the final plat for steeplechase at Washington Fields Phase 3, located approximately 700 East Treasure Valley Drive, Taylor Built Homes.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, the request for the final plat. This particular phase of the subdivision is proposing 26 lots, and it is the third and final of Steeplechase at Washington Fields. The 26 lots are being proposed on an area covering 7.97 acres. The zoning at this location is the single-family residential 6,000 square foot minimum, or R16. The amended preliminary plat was approved back on March 22nd, earlier this year of 2017. Staff has reviewed the request of proposal and finds the proposed final plat indeed conforms to the approved amended preliminary plat. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their June 7th meeting last week. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the final plat for Steeplechase at Washington Fields Phase 3 subdivision to the City Council, and that's based on the findings and subject to the standard 5 conditions on this one. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you have on Steeplechase number 3.
Anybody have some wheat bread out there?
Peanut butter.
Toaster.
Bagels.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the final plat for Steeplechase at Washington Fields, Phase 3, located approximately 700 East Treasure Valley Drive.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second.
Break eye.
Nice night.
Ellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Maybe I.
Thank you. Item 9, ordinance, consideration to approve an ordinance, a zone change request, Z-17-17, to change from open space to R18, single-family residential, minimum 8,000 square foot lots, located approximately 900 north, 500 west. Applicant Steve Howcroft.
Thank you, Mayor. This is one of the item that's finished its 2-week holdover and has been completed for this application. Again, it is a proposed zone change approximately 11.325 acres from the current open space to the single-family residential 8,000 square foot minimum R18. The Planning Commission reviewed it at their May 3rd meeting. The Planning Commission, by a vote of 3-2, recommended approval of Z-17-17 for the change from open space to R18. I'm glad to answer if any questions you've had in your last 2 weeks.
I wasn't here 2 weeks ago with the 2 dissenting votes. What was the reasoning they gave?
No, I'm not sure if they just stated they didn't like the change.
Okay.
So I don't know if there was specific, as I recall.
Well, I think part of it was questions were brought up about floodplains and geological or ecological issues.
Impact on the wash.
Yeah.
How many acres is the open space? It's going to be remain open space?
That's a good question. I don't know if we
I don't think there was
had them write that up, but if I'm going to guess, with their proposing of 11, I would tend to think this is close to 7 or 8 left in open space.
Good trade-off in my book.
60-40 split, roughly 5.5.
The lots on the edge of the canyon or gully went down to the middle like they do on the other side. How large would those lots be?
Without, I haven't seen them yet, but if I was to guess, and if those are going to be a minimum of 8,000, they would probably go up, over double that. I would think that most of them would end up being like the worst case scenario. I'm thinking might be right there at that point, but that depending on where that laid, it might double that lot or get it close. Maybe the worst case scenario would be a 14,000 square foot lot, and the rest of them would all be 15, 16s or greater if they were to go like you have across the street at the Buena Vista one. That black line is right down in the middle of the creek or somewhere in proximity to that. So I guess the best way to say it is the worst case would be somewhere 13, 14, and the rest would be up to, could be 18 or greater following the border.
Do you feel like the gully issue on the property was resolved? I think they said that they were going to manage that, not fill it.
Will not fill it.
Is that
Yeah,
right?
I think if they mentioned anything, they might cut you can almost see that little vein where that, right in between that 103.53 and then that SO. There's a little vein that runs through there. They thought about maybe doing a cut to give access, a trail down in there, but I think a lot of people didn't want people having access down there and making it easy for them. Even though we've kind of made it easy over in the
There's trails
Brio
all over
area.
to the south there, and there's accesses over.
Through the Brio, yeah.
Through
You can come
Brio
in through
to it.
Brio extensively down that area. And in fact, our
And not
plans
only
are
that, from Buena Vista
from
Drive.
Buena
too.
Vista as well. And the plan is for, yeah, there's supposed to be a trail and a road. And we actually, I think as part of our parks master trail system is going to have a park of some sort down in there. I don't know how, if it's going to be more of a native one or how much Blake has, planned or hoped for down there, but there
Yeah,
will probably be a
discussions
park
I've
down
had
there.
with him has been pretty much to leave it as a
Native park.
thing. I mean, you got that beautiful creek down through there that
Yeah.
kind of has its own ambience with it, and just to kind of
I think I want to make
maybe-
more of a trailhead, didn't you, type
exactly
of a
just put a
thing.
trail so people can access and go and enjoy
Yeah.
just the natural part of that.
And I appreciate that some of the community there on the other side is concerned that that will disturb the animals that are down there. But it may also increase the number of people that get to enjoy them. So I think it depends a lot on what we do.
You will see a preliminary plat and have your view at that as well. So
If this was R10 designation, how many less homes would you think would fit in that area?
Councilman,
You're
Nix,
probably
we're
talk-
probably only getting 32 lots in their total.
it might change it 3 to 4 lots would be the difference.
And I think everything in Brio, what does it range from? They're down to even 6,000 square foot.
There are probably some that are in the high sixes, and that's what Councilman Bellison's saying is the Brio area right here. They range probably anywhere from 68 up to 95 in this particular area right here. So it's
Even though
somewhat
it's straight
fixing with
zone, It's
that.
going to be more of an extension of the Brio project than anything. So
In fact, I think a lot of people won't even know where where the one ends and the unless they start
I just seen that was some of the concern. They would have liked the R10 or R, 15.
Bigger. And I think if I remember right, the applicant kind of stated that they would have some larger lots, but they needed to work with the topography a little bit to have that option to go down to the R18s just to kind of work with it. So,
on those interior ones. Yeah.
correct.
Have to see that platting.
Given that those are where the larger ones would be, the people living across the canyon would see the larger lots.
Yeah, that would be the ones that they would be in direct.
but effectively wouldn't even change a layout to go ahead and do a row of R15 and run their lots all the way down to the bottom of the wash and not give up the open space.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Good.
I prefer to have the open
needed
space.
than extending those lots just to meet a.
Where then
Or
people are
meet-
trespassing.
Meet the
Yeah.
criticism of it,
I
so.
agree with you.
Yeah, because if you make the lots go down there, it pretty much is trespassing. Like, I know you all got a letter from an individual from Quail Ridge, and they're claiming a lot of people are treading. That would just make it even a worse case scenario that people wouldn't be able to go up at all. Maybe that's what some of them want, but
Well, unless there's other discussion, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the zone change request C-17 to change from open space to R18, located approximately 900 north and 500 west. Applicant Stephen Howcroft.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Nice night.
Ellis and I.
Granger, aye.
IVI.
All right. That is approved. Item 10, public hearings. It's like we have 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 public hearings. Okay, for those listed, item A, public hearing for consideration to approve a zone change request Z-17-18 to change current zone from open space to R110 single-family residential, minimum 10,000 square foot lots, and C-1 community commercial located approximately 3,300 south, 1,600 east. Applicant Lance Richards.
Thank you, Mayor. You're probably familiar with this area. We've done a lot of changes down in this neck of the woods here in the last several months, and this is just follow up to some general plan amendments. The applicant is requesting the zone change approximately 14.88 acres. The requested change is from, again, as stated, the current open space to and I'm sorry, there is open space and a little bit of R115 that they need to change to the R110. I kind of confused myself with my own report, but it's open space and R115, and it'll be changed to R110, and that'll be approximately 8.95 acres, and that's this particular area right here in the middle. It's kind of confusing, but I'll just go and run my pin along so everybody can follow. This area right here, up, over, here, and then down. That's roughly the 9 acres that's is being proposed to the single family 10,000 square foot R110 designation. And then the remaining 5 acres down here, 5.94, almost 6 acres to the community commercial C1 zoning designation. The R110 request is for the purpose of developing the parcel in the future residential development, as well as the C1 request for future commercial development. And that will probably come when and after the intersection at 3650 and the southern corridor meet up just to the east of this area. The general plan land use designation for this location is low density residential and neighborhood commercial. These two designations were recently approved by the Planning Commission and City Council. The low density residential carries a 3.5 to 4 dwelling unit per acre density ratio, and the surrounding zoning to these two parcels is open space to the east, west, and south with R115 to the north. Staff reviewed the requested zone change application, finds it conforms to the general plan and the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission reviewed through a public hearing a request on May 17th. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-17-18 for the zone change request from open space and R115 to the proposed residential 10,000 square foot and the community commercial C1 zoning as outlined in your exhibit. That's on to the City Council with the findings. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have on this proposal.
Drew, the temporary detention basin that's being abandoned, I'm assuming that drainage will then be picked up in this new parcel?
Yes, in fact, you'll be seeing a preliminary plat to the piece that's above and kind of talks about all this. And that's been hit very heavily and extensively. The Lester's made sure they understand all the drainage issues that are associated. So that is a preliminary plat coming. It's already been applied for this area up here that you recently zone changed R115. But Lester's letting the engineers know they have quite a bit of water to take care of from the north, coming all the way through the
They've
area.
collected a long ways to get to there, exactly.
Yes, and so they've got plans and how that water is going to be addressed. So
And I'm assuming that that abandoned then would just be deeded back to those property owners that are adjacent to that, rather than leaving a weed patch in the middle of two neighborhoods.
right. Well, you've got another zone change request coming due west of this here, and it's all going to help hopefully all that development.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that little sliver that you've got where you're abandoning, you're going to leave that. There's a
That area
there's a
right
little
there.
sliver in between right there.
Yeah.
That only would make sense that then it gets deeded back to those lots that abut it.
If it's not being used, we'll have to see how the design comes in.
Well,
Is that-
if we're abandoning it, it better not be being used.
Yeah, I guess they're saying it might. I'll wait and see how that comes in. But if it is abandoned, yes, it probably then should be addressed back over to those 3 property owners.
Drew, as these zone
Right.
changes come about along 3650 towards the southern corridor, has there been more work done on the access point and the angle of the road? Is it There has
Oh,
been
there
more.
Sounds like there has been. No, they've been working on it ever since these 3 projects. They've been really all working together. So,
I think one of the future zone changes that are coming kind of hinges on that work. Thank you.
yeah. But we'll definitely keep an eye on that, Councilman Turek, and see what that design comes in at.
Any additional questions for Drew or the applicant? Is the applicant here? Okay, if not, this is a public hearing, which means you're in the public, an opportunity to talk about this certain project, whether you like it or don't. And give the council an opportunity to hear your voice and consider the project.
Mayor, seeing no one come forward, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to close this public hearing.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Allison, aye.
Nice night.
Terry Guy.
All right, just a reminder that the decision on that will not be made until the 28th. 2 weeks. Item B, public hearing for consideration to approve a zone change request E-17-19 to change current zone from open space to R15, single family residential, minimum 15,000 square foot lots, leaving a portion as open space located approximately 1100 east, 3400 south, applicant KC Clark Company LLC.
As promised, this is the one just west of the previous. The applicant is requesting a zone change of approximately 10.7 acres. The requested change is from the current zoning of open space to the proposed single-family residential 15,000 square foot minimum, or the R115 zoning designation. The R115 portion of this request is for the purpose of developing the parcel into future residential subdivision. The general plan land use designation for this location is very low density residential, which carries with it a 1.5 to 2.5 dwelling unit per acre density ratio. The surrounding zoning to the parcel is open space to the east and south and R115 to the north and west. Staff reviewed the requested zone change and finds it conforms to the general plan and the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at a public hearing they held on May 17th, 2017, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-17-19 for the zone change request from open space to the proposed single-family 15,000 square foot minimum, or R115 zoning designation, on to you, the City Council, along with the findings in your report. Glad to answer any questions you might have on this.
So what's going to happen with 3650 South where it's going and cutting into that debris basin?
That, you want to come in? Put that line you see right there is the
Well,
top
I
of the
know, but
debris
that's part of
basin.
the debris basin now.
Yeah.
And it's showing 3650 coming and button. Actually,
It's actually going to go
at
up and
least
follow.
this map shows it coming in partially into that debris basin.
Line will actually come. It has to go around the dike.
No, I get that. It's,
That
Okay.
portion 3650 won't happen. In essence. It's just been platted already as from future stuff, and we realize it's going to have to.
well,
Start
we're
going
showing a
north.
straight line alignment. At some point, we got to be showing the,
Right. What you're seeing in the other developments is the road that's up here. This is.
Where's the space?
Scroll back. This is the existing 3650
okay.
sugar plum. So our alignment for the new road is gonna have to come off here, we met this property owner. Through that with him, the road will actually come up like this round.
And then it'll align those property lines. Okay. All right. How many acres do they want to zone on this? I'm looking at the other map.
Yeah, it's 10.7 acres is what's. But I think that might be the whole piece, but we'll just be. I'll have to find for sure. Yeah, I guess the whole piece is 20.4 They're basically almost doing half of that. Will be the 10.7. It looks like it's more than half, Will.
So right now, the only improved access they have is on Noble Drive.
Correct. And that's, you can see Noble Drive dropping in there.
It's this right here.
That open space, they're leaving open space have any utility for us?
That open space is the debris basin that they're leaving south. It's just the big water collector.
Could be a retention, is it?
That's what it is being used for right now. Yeah. It's actually retention with the whole debris. If a bunch of debris comes through, it all will collect here. And then there's a big standpipe in there where then the water would then go through it instead of all the debris like logs, et cetera, that might come with a flood.
So it's
This
not, it's
catches
not a
it.
future soccer field is what I'm hearing.
Well, it could be.
Or a ball field.
Yeah,
It could be all part of that super park.
could it?
Could.
Okay.
It'll just cost us more than the BLM land you see at that line right there south of it. So
Any other questions for Drew? Is the applicant here? Glad to see you. Any questions for the applicant? Did you want to come up, say anything?
Good afternoon, Council. Taylor Ricks, representing the applicant. Wanted to follow up on what Mike was saying. We have met with both Lester and Drew, and that 3650 alignment. We've also met with the two property owners to the east, and we've come to an agreement both about the geometry and the location of that alignment so that it'll serve the common interest of all the property owners along that corridor. And as mentioned by Drew, the roadway alignment will skirt the dike, and neither the cuts or the fills on the dike side of the road will impact the existing dike material. And NRCS has reviewed that alignment as well.
Could you give us an idea? It says that you're leaving a portion open space. Can you give us kind of an idea of what you're thinking there?
We don't intend to develop that portion. Any improvements put there are subject to the flooding that could occur. And so our intent right now is just to leave it natural ground or native ground as it is, unless the city has a desire to come in and use it for some utility. Another question? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Again, it's a public hearing. Any of you that have an interest in this proposal? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Okay. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Anybody?
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we close the public hearing for consideration to approve the zone change request C-17-19.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second.
IVI?
Granger, aye.
Bell's and I.
Nice night.
Turek, aye.
Okay, the public hearing is closed on this item, and it will again be determined and voted on in our next city council meeting on the 28th. Item C, public hearing for consideration to approve zone change request Z-17-20 to change current zone from A20 agricultural 20-acre lots to R-1-10 single-family residential minimum 10,000 square foot lots. C1, community, commercial, and open space located approximately on the northwest corner of Washington Fields Road and 2000 South, or from 1575 South to 2000 South, and from Heritage Fields Road east to Washington Fields Road. Applicant, Nyson Fields, LLC.
thank you, Mayor. As stated, the applicant is requesting a variety of zone changes on this 53.364 acre parcel. Requested changes from the current zoning of Ag 20 or 20 acre minimum agricultural to the proposed, as stated, single family 10,000 square foot. And that's that area that's the cream color. And see on there, it's actually showing up as white right in the middle. And that area covers 43.449 acres. And then they're also proposing a C1 community commercial, which is shown in red. And that particular area covers 9.915 acres. And the hill will be left in a, actually we need to change it to an open space designation. That's what it is on the general plan. So this one was kind of left out in the Planning Commission public hearing, but after going back and reviewing the general plan, realized we couldn't let them just put an R110 on it and then just say they're not going to use it. So I talked with the applicant and their engineer, and they graciously came back, and that green area you see right there is the hill that is actually would be best just to turn to open space. And so that's what's for you tonight. The general plan land use designations for this location is low density residential and neighborhood commercial. The neighborhood commercial was the piece given about 16, 17 months ago by the city council in a general plan amendment change. The low density residential carries with it a 3 to 4 dwelling unit per acre density ratio. The surrounding zoning to the parcel is R110 to the north, R110 and R18 to the west, A20, R112 to the south, and then the R112 and RA half and PUD to the east. Staff has reviewed the requested zone change, finds it conforms to the general plan and the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission held a public hearing at their meeting of May 17th, 2017. The Planning Commission, by a vote of 3-1, recommended approval of Z-17-20 for the zone change request from agricultural 20 acre to the proposed R110 for the 43.449 acres, and then 9.915 acres for community commercial C1 zoning. And part of that 43.49, I didn't go through and take that out, is that knoll that won't be part of that. So I'll have to adjust that acreage in the next 2 weeks. So with that, that recommendation was passed on to the city council with the findings in your report. I'll be glad to answer any questions that the council might have on the request.
What was the issue with the dissenting vote?
No, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, well, because of the hill? Okay. Yeah, there was quite a bit of discussion about the hill. And we talked about, well, we'll take care of it at preliminary plats or everything like that. And I think we kind of left it. I think that was one of the reasons why they weren't comfortable with that knoll in there. So, but we've taken that out since that time.
You know, I can appreciate the open space, the hill there, but as I look at this development, I don't see a lot of open space for parks or anything like that. Is there any consideration been given to that?
Well, we've had this discussion before. When you go with straight zoning, our straight zoning does not require that. And we have that question brought up many
I would like to
times.
see it though, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. But like I said, when
Any open space, if it were, some would be a preliminary plat instead of the zoning on the site. So,
it won't show that left amongst there, that they just don't do that. If they do anything, it would be within a subdivision. Appreciate Councilman Belson bringing that out.
So Drew, just for clarification, that knoll is currently zoned RE20, is that correct?
It is. The whole Nyson piece is under the
So
R.
that fell in as part of it.
Yeah, they
So-
just put it because it was one landowner.
So
you know,
part
at
of
the
this would
time.
be taking that out of the RE20 and putting that into open space.
Open space. Yeah.
Want to make sure I'm clear and that the public's clear with what we're doing there.
That's what the general plan calls for. So, and this is the new open space that we decided it's, we really 98% will try to hold true and dear. We set aside a bunch of other open space properties that not yet determined category when we updated the general plan earlier in the year. And this is not one of those pieces that went to that. This was held. And it also falls within the hillside protection, that particular knoll.
so just for sake of discussion, right now we just have one PUD zone, but we're in the process of splitting those out.
Into
Um,
5 approximately.
How does how does commercial fit under the current PUD zone as we have it written? We just, it doesn't really differentiate.
It does. It just says you have to, you know, on the PUD commercial that we have currently, it's kind of like our PUD residential. It just says, here's permitted uses, and it'll just give you it. And ours just says commercial activity. You know, it's kind of what it says in the PUD for commercial. And then just, you have to do a write-up, and you have to show all the buildings, the elevations, and the site plan. And that's what the PUD commercial at this time, you know, has in it. And it won't change too much, but it'll just give some more options for mixed commercial, et cetera, the new one that we're doing. So.
Is both the commercial and the housing, how come it's not separate? How come it's under the one?
For the one application, well, that's probably a bit of my snafu. Usually I like to, even though the applicant can come in and do that, they own the property and it's all done by legal description. So, you know, I like to break them up. I should have caught that before and didn't, but it was already put out there. So we're just running it like it is. So now you have the option as a city council to take a recommendation and modify that, what the planning commission gives you. And part of that means you can modify whatever you feel to modify.
Any questions for Drew? The applicant here.
I'm Paul Blackmore with BlackRock Engineering. I represent the applicant. Any questions or?
What, we talked a couple weeks ago. Have you looked at further what
We have
you want to do with the site or what?
We've had previous discussions on the advantages of a PUD, and one of the things that's happened to us is there's a change to how the PUD right now is in a zone. We can't just simply go into a PUD zone. And so one of the things that's happened to us is we're kind of caught between what's coming and where we are. And we do believe that incorporating the commercial into the site, and especially as we wrap around the hill and different things that are going to come into play, we do believe that eventually we'll turn it to a PUD. But currently, because the client is looking to close a deal with the owners of the properties and lock it in, what we're looking for is some type of entitlement that says, okay, are we buying farmland or are we buying developable land?
Well, but you understand, once the zoning is granted, you become entitled, and we've had a lot of people tell us that, hey, we promised to do this and promised to do that. Once they get entitled, all promises are out the window, or property changes hands, or, hey, we just didn't want to do that. So
we can all get hit by a bus. And so, like I said, our goal when we set up this zone change, our goal was simply to match the general plan. That's what the owner was selling to us, and we're like, okay, if we can get this zoning, then we'll purchase it at this price. So that's really where we are, is we're trying to say, okay, what are we buying? Are we buying land with an R110, or are we, you know, what is the land in the eyes of the city? So,
Drew, what would it take to separate the application from the zone? Because right now we have them tied, and we've talked about this, but I don't know what.
You mean to break these two pieces up?
No. To separate out the requirement to have the site elevations, all of that, the application documents from the zoning that says, okay, he's now got a zoning that he knows he can move forward with and close on the property, but the application will come later.
I think he's talking in a PUD.
Well, yeah, but to do that, the only way I can see of doing that is I guess you guys have had this discussion. I'm going to come in and hopefully I'm seeing what you're talking about. You want to be able to zone something PUD, just to say it's PUD, and then you're going to bring back your project and we're going to view it at a later date instead of having it all at the same time.
Well, I understand the applicants.
Oh, no,
That's
but
exactly what you're saying.
in
Similar to what
essence-
we do in a zoning situation where we give you R110, then you bring your preliminary
plat
back
in.
to us. It's the same concept of zoning at PUD, then you bring the PUD.
What I would
concept.
have to say would be the cleanest way to do that would you just say we're going to have PUD as an option, but every PUD, once we give it to you, you're going to have to go through a conditional use permit for your approval on the project.
Why couldn't you do exactly what we're talking about with the preliminary plat situation?
But you probably could. I mean, we'd have to create some new
That's what
animal
I'm saying, yeah.
is what it
It's,
is.
you know,
So,
it's- yeah, it's
and
no
you
different
could
than
just say, I
current
mean,
plat, but-
and I guess we could do it. I mean, I don't know. I'd talk with Jeff and maybe some others. We could create some animal that just says, we're giving you the PUD. That's step one of your
That's the zone.
approval. Now you're going to bring your project in and the planning commission, city council have to approve the project
Exactly.
as a step 2 of that PUD. Now, I don't know how that's going to fall with LUDMA and all that. I don't know if that's going to be a mess or a nightmare, but that's keeping it. We like to keep it simple, but sometimes when you get into state laws, simplicity goes out the window. And
Well, you get into a situation like this one here to where you've got a purchase agreement that's moving forward. And then, and it's such a large size that, and I think that they've heard this council talk about, hey, we really would like a PUD in this thing. And so, but how do they know what the council's looking for yet trying to purchase? So are we buying farm ground? Are we buying, what are we really buying? And so I think by what he's saying is, or at least the councilman's saying is, look, if we could give them a PUD zone, then he knows that, hey, I'm buying a PUD project that I can move forward on in my agreement with my landowner that I'm purchasing here. So.
See, I'm comfortable granting that, but granting a straight zone, there's a couple of problems with the straight zone on this parcel that I'm uncomfortable with. One is on the commercial, you know, if we grant the straight zone, then those borders are hard and fixed. Where if you do it as a PUD, you've got some flexibility to create a cool project and create some movement with that. The other one with the straight zone, I walked the property today, and on the west side of that hill is a pretty good spot to do some park area, and they ought to be able to, if they're going to give up some park area, they ought to be able to gain that density back on the other ground. You know, but if we do it straight zoning, we lose that.
yeah, the only issue I have, and not that I would blame you good people here, but if I'm not even looking at this one per se, you had a council change because we have a election coming up. You voted as PUD because you all feel comfortable with what they're going to do, but you may end up with 3 new people here who have a whole different vision of what that is. And then the applicant's going to say, well, you gave me PUD. How come you're not? I'm just saying that if it's so open and it's a bit vague doing that,
Well, that may
some
be the case
structure.
with Bella Vista is PUD, and we're going through a new application process on it. And yeah, this is my personal feeling. I just like the ability to be able to sit down with the applicant before they put all the time and money into drawing up plans, drawing up elevations, drawing up designs, and doing the market research and doing all those steps. I'd like to be able to give them some direction on the front side rather than have them go through all that. And, well, we don't like this project, and then they're back to square one.
Yeah, I see where you're going. And again, I tend to agree with that. I'm worried about the one developer's thinking I'm not being treated like the guy before me, or get the guy 3 guys in front of me. You're doing something because it ends up being almost a case by case basis as you're looking through that process instead of having, that's all I'm just here to try to protect you and the city as we move forward on those. I don't mind going that direction. I just wonder if there might be a train wreck that could just.
My bigger concern is, I mean, by definition and by functionality, our PUDs create the zone. That once we create the PUD, you kind of created the zone it is based on what the land use is. And if they just have a general PUD for, I don't care what, for residential, for example, the concern I have is if they bring in a plan at any point, it could be the same council. Say, no, I can't go for that plan. It's going to be the response is that we pretty much were told we'd bring it in, you'd approve it, and they were gone through at the purchase already.
Well, which is why I like the different PD zones that we're pursuing now. You know, St. George, if you go get a PD AP zone, you know that you can do a PUD, but it's office-based PUD. It's not a retail-based PUD, you know, or an industrial-based PUD, or you know, any of the different options. But at least you know what you're doing. You've had some discussion at the zoning to where you can go design it and at least save yourself a lot of headache.
I feel like general plan might be the place to have it as a PUD, because we've talked about this before too. That is, you put the general plan as a PUD, we don't have to specify what's being done with it. When the landowner comes in, because they have a plan and they already have the PUD, they
You
just gotta
understand,
work
that
out
was
with
part of
you
the
guys.
discussion 17 months ago was to, I think if we could have done it as a PD at the
Yeah.
general plan, we probably would
Right.
have.
And I'm saying that would work from, at least from, my limited, I mean, I'm not, maybe not from an artistic mind to really see the whole vision, but for me, if you could have that as a general plan, people could get that land and go, what I do know is I can come in with my plans for my PUD, because it's already zone PUD. I don't have to change the zone necessarily out of nowhere. And then they can get what PUDs provide to us. That is, your development, which has been approved, is the zone. And that's where I see the disconnect.
Well, that's, I think, exactly what we're talking
Yeah.
about here, is saying that, can we disconnect the zone from the development or the preliminary plat, if we want to call it that,
Ends up being a two-step,
process?
4 meetings.
Correct.
2 meetings.
Well, but it's, yeah.
But you can have some workshops.
And there's no guarantee. What I want to make sure is the developers understand, there's no guarantee that when they do bring the plan in, just because the city council said, yes, a PUD, let's work on the plan, bring it.
And I
to
think
us.
we've set a precedence with that already. We've been through that. We had a PUD zone out there. They brought the plan. We said, no, that ain't what we want.
And as I recall, they were a little less than happy about the
No,
fact,
that's,
claiming the very same things I said, and that was, well, you kind of promised us.
well, but the thing of it was, and you saw the process I would hope take place. They came back in and sat down with the council in a workshop and said, okay, let's work together on this thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I would see happening in those types of things. But anyway.
At the moment, however, we have not that process.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
I guess one of the questions that would have to be asked of the applicant is, especially based upon his desire to close, is how would he like to see that timing because that process of revising the code would take some time.
Yeah, time is always an issue when you're paying interest. And so one of our issues is we need to know that we have entitlements that basically say we can move forward. But there's no question, as we've looked into the project, we do want to eventually convert it to a PUD. And we're essentially, in our minds, we're thinking if we can move forward with phase 1 or 2, something that says, okay, we know, and realistically looking at this site, it's pretty obvious that an R110 type configuration is going to be part of the project. Somewhere in here, it's going to have that kind of a density, that kind of a flow. And then for us, as we have a chance to do more market analysis on who may be interested in the commercial, as we get a chance to explore different avenues, that's where we see we are actually converting to a PUD as we wrap around the hill in different aspects. But for us, we really need basically some type of confirmation from the city that says, hey, we're supportive of where you're going, what you're doing, so we can justify spending the time and money to invest in this type of research. A PUD isn't something that just comes out of a napkin. There's a lot of study, a lot of iterations as we go through and try to find out what actually works and fits. And so what we're looking for is something that says, hey, this land is developable. We have the city's support. This is the direction we're going. But it needs to be something more than just some vague, somewhere we're going to change a PUD ordinance and we're going to get something down the road. We need something that we can actually move on.
Well, you can move on the property now.
Am I moving on R110 or am I moving on ag? And am I spending your money and your interest or mine?
Well,
I mean that very sincerely.
understand where you're going. I
I've
understand what
seen
you're saying.
in my career, I've seen just as many developers go bankrupt as I've seen have success. And part of that is you don't jump from step to step. You take good, solid steps. You make sure why you're doing something. And part of what we're here for is, do we have the city's support in what we're doing? And then please note, our approach to this was simply trying to match the master plan. That's all. Everything you see here was directly off the master
I
plan.
understand that, which is why I gave you the minutes from
Mhm.
from the discussion that we had, last spring,
Mhm.
where if we could have master general planned it that way, we would have.
And we would have been thrilled. That would have simplified our lives. But like I say, we're caught kind of right in that
As
cusp
I
of a change.
recall, the motion that was made says, yeah, we'll general plan it at this, but with a note on our general plan map that we want it to go to a PUD. That's how the motion was made.
I know, and I don't know how. I don't say this the right way, is I don't know if we can actually do that.
That's fine.
Because it's either general, that's, I think the best way I can say it is I don't know if I would stand on its merit if it was challenged.
Any other questions?
I guess I just have one question. I just want to reiterate what I said, is that if there's a way to move densities to create some open space for, I don't know, a little park or something, there's a lot of kids, great community right there. I think that the residents there could benefit from that. Just my 2 cents.
Well, and understand something, we've learned, this isn't our first development, and we've learned that anything we can do that raises the value of the quality of life, especially something that carries from one generation to another, you're going to have something where people want to stay. You're going to have something that resale is strong. You're going to have something where families can grow. And that's where we're doing a lot of research on what can be done with the hill. We've walked the hill multiple times. We've done a lot of talking on, here's a focal point of our entire development as well as that area. We know it's something that, it's not practical to build on or anything like that. It's got hillside on it. It's designated open space, but it is very complementary to our development. And that's where we're, like I said, when we have a better idea of what's going on with the potential commercial uses, and we've discussed many, but at this time we don't know anybody who's saying, hey, we want this. But as we look at the different commercial uses and how that integrates in with the neighborhood and the different way it can flow, we truly believe it will be a PUD eventually. But we also know that if we don't have some type of commitment from the city that says, we know we can move forward with phase 1 and 2, that we can actually start doing something with some confidence. Somewhere in there, we've got to step back and say, wait, we're not ready to move. And those are the issues that we're faced with. So.
Thank you. Other questions? All right, thank you, sir. All right, again, public hearing. I know there are some people interested in this one.
I'm in the home and I have a house on 285 East, 2000 South. I would like to know, I can't read this thing, I'm not that smart. Where is this located? Is this located by the church, or where is this located? This whole
Across from the church where all that alfalfa field is. It's all that. It's all that.
Where the white rail fence is around
Okay.
the alfalfa, that
So
field,
that
the hillside, and then the backside of that hillside.
Ma'am, could you move
I'm
to the
sorry.
mic? Yes, okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. Would that be, let's see, 285?
See, there's the map right there, ma'am.
Here are your two churches,
Okay,
and here's the field. This is the parcel we're talking about.
okay, and we are
This
the,
hill is the part that we're talking about.
okay. Because we're the single home right there on the corner, and I just want to know where it's located, because I'm from Salt Lake, I don't know this area. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have any questions for her?
Good evening, council. My name is Tanya Jozanowski, and my husband and I 10 years ago bought property in Canterwood Estates, which is just to the west of this property. And especially when I moved out here, part of the appeal of this area was the open space, the agricultural feel. But we realized that probably wasn't going to stay that way forever, that there was probably going to be some development. So I studied the general plan pretty closely back then. And there was a stipulation, if I remember correctly, that said that if there was very low density residential, that they needed to have a park, or they needed to have some kind of an open space in that area. And that's one of the concerns that I have. It's just, and I was glad to hear Councilman Ivey bring that up, is that we want to have those things that the developer also was talking about that are going to preserve the feel of this area. We enjoy animals. We enjoy, the nature. We would love to see trails. We would love to see parks. We would love to see some of those things. You talked a little bit about the top of the hill. I would love to see maybe a little park down below or something like that. And so I just wanted to express that concern. It sounds like to me that the council has those things in mind, and I appreciate that as a citizen, as a property owner out there. But just wanted to let my voice be heard before this decision was made. So thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Adams. I live, if we'll scroll up just a little bit there. I live right on the corner of 1575 South and Karma, which the alfalfa field is directly to the east of me. And part of the reason we bought our lot where we did is because of this very knoll and the field and everything that way and stuff. I understand development and everything. I understand Councilman Bellison's concerns, Councilman Ivy's. I'm glad you brought up the park thing, just like she mentioned and stuff too. And for that area right there, just directly north of where the knoll is, if something's going to be developed on there, rather than the homes or anything like that, that would be an ideal spot for that park if that was a consideration for that. So it's just, I just as soon see the area left the way it was, you know, because that's why we moved out here and whatnot. But I understand even the field to the west there is going to get developed soon too. So just that little north section there, if somebody's going to do something rather than home development or something and do a park, that's my thoughts. So
Any questions for Jeff?
So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Haley, I live right here, right there. So I've thought about this slide. I apologize I didn't get to come last time to, I had a meeting, I couldn't come. But I took a little walk around a couple of days ago and again today. Just a couple of things. I think we're kind of an interesting situation here where he's trying to leverage you to do something and we're trying to leverage you to do something. We would like to see a couple of certain things, but he can't really say if he's going to do them or not because he doesn't know if he's going to buy it. And so we're kind of sitting here going, just kind of give us an idea what you're going to do. And we're in the same situation. We want to know that, and he wants to know what you're going to do. A couple of things about this. I believe that this field, the big hay field, is the heart of the Washington fields. It's the gem. That crossroads there has always been the gem. And so whatever you do, make it great. And I think that's what we want. I'm living on a Staley Farms field that was a hay field before. So none of us are here to stop that. A couple of things I'm concerned about for me, a couple of things is the access between the two. What are your some plans there? Because that's just right behind my house. A couple of things, and again, this is just an old Washington guy. Shade is gold. There's some shade, and I would suggest that if you put a children's park, name it after Roy, right where his barn is, it would be a Shangri-La right under that red roof right there. If you would put something like that, and I think if they knew that, they might give you that, and that's kind of back and forth. Let me look at my notes for a couple other things. A couple of things I'm concerned about, again, are the trees, the cottonwood trees. They have continually been watered probably for 80, 100 years by wastewater. My whole backyard is designed for the wastewater to come through there. That won't be there anymore. So I think you can have some concerns about that. These are all little things. I think a blanket R10 designation at this time, I've listened to him and I hear him trying to leverage you, but I don't think people dig test holes out in fields that aren't ready to go do something. I think if you would give us a little idea of some things you're planning on in regards to what we can do to keep that magical down there, especially on the west side of that hill where the corrals are right now. I think we would, but I don't think there's any of us that live out there that can say we don't want this. We want open fields. Sorry, we already took them too. We don't have the right to do that. But just give us an idea of some plans that you have, and I think that may help some of the votes here on the council. I wish you had done, I do know that at the meeting 17 months ago that we did talk about a PUD because Belliston taught me what PUDs were, and I wish we had done that back then, and I think they would go and we would go and everybody would be happy, but I think we need a little more answers of what you're going to do. Thanks.
Any questions for Bert? Thank you.
I agree with a lot of what Bert's saying. We do all love the fields. Amy Fife, sorry. We all moved out there because we loved them, but we knew they were going to disappear just like when our houses were built. But I kind of don't like the only excuse that a guy comes to say is because he's worried about his interest. I'm worried about my interest, my house, my investment. They have a nice park that's usually so full. None of the residents use it. It's used with soccer. The next one is Pineview. So we all have kids that have to travel, little kids, a very long ways. I'm sorry. I agree with Bert towards a very special area. It's like Schnabkai. It's just a hill. It's a cool hill. And I think something needs to be done with it, and he needs more of a plan, I think, to present us with. I think we need more than, I want a commitment from you because I don't want to lose my money. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just a comment. We appreciate your passion. We love this city too.
Just one comment. We don't want to drown and just go bankrupt. It's more than just about money. It's about success. It's about moving forward in a positive way. And what we're doing isn't a disregard to anyone else's investment. And as far as the hill goes, please note, we'll talk to the property owners there and ask them, should we pay for the price they're asking for that property? Because they're the ones selling it. We're just simply saying, what are we buying?
Anybody else?
Hi, Diane Ray, 2 cents. I agree with everybody about here. I don't think it's wise to do a blanket approval. I think it would be better to know exactly what you are voting on instead of just a blanket okay. Again, we love our neighborhood.
Where do you live?
I'm at the very end of 285 East, 2000 South. I'm the lone wolf out there. But we fought hard not to get the commercial close to the other residential. So we're thrilled about that. But we'd love to have a park. But I just think we shouldn't have a blanket statement. I think it should be more detailed. You as a council should know exactly what you're voting on. Us as the residents need to know what's going on. I mean, nobody buys something without knowing what they're doing. So for what it's worth, thank you.
Thank you.
And Daniel Pluff. I find this an interesting argument because I've participated in the city in a lot of different hues and intentions. I remember that the community had a gem property, which we know as the Warm Springs or the Boilers. And approaching that from a developer point of view, I can sympathize. However, I appreciate the scrutiny and the detail that the council put us through to make sure that we had not only we want this to happen, but we had insane amounts of plans and details. And with that being said, from a citizen point of view, we went under. It didn't happen. And looking at what we're doing forward on the Boilers now, I think it's great. And so it's kind of, for me, a bittersweet thing. But I think in interest of the citizens, just as a goodwill, it is not an enormous expense. Speaking from my point of view of going through something, yeah, no one wants to lose, but I think you have to protect the interest of the community before you can say, yes, let's develop that. And I think that needs to be fleshed out more before the citizens feel confident and supporting that. It really is that gem piece of property that holds the fields together, and it needs a little bit of extra scrutiny. It just can't be put out there. It needs more.
Daniel, any questions for him?
No, I just appreciate the earlier comment that recognized how much back and forth debate there was, even to look at that commercial and where it was and where it wasn't. And I think this kind of dialogue is the right kind of dialogue for us to have. And I think we heard you last time and worked with it too. There's a lot going on during that time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Jeremy Anderson. I'm not even here for this, but but the thing I want to remind everybody here as a citizen of the city and of the council is we have to remember the very foundation of our nation and what it's all about. You know, we are here because of the Constitution of the United States. We're here because of the way the founders built this. And I'm not on either side because this doesn't affect me. I live up, you know, north of the main road out here. So this doesn't really affect me, but if people are so concerned about protecting land, buy it, make it yours, and then you can protect it. If they're gonna make a purchase to do a build, and that's their investment, they have every right to do that. If they're buying it, that's their constitutional right to do what they want with it if they're gonna buy it. But if it's gonna infringe on other people's constitutional rights, then yes, that's where your guys' job is to defend the constitutional rights of everybody here. That's your job to represent us in that manner.
I probably disagree with you in the sense that that's why we have zoning ordinance and whatnot
Sure.
in the city. So if you want to buy a piece of property and do whatever you want, you buy that property out in county or unincorporated areas that don't have
Right.
zoning ordinances that.
If you're moving into a place that already has rules, you abide by those rules. I agree. But I just feel like you could stand on this constitutionally and say, is this going to void the value of the homes of the people around it? And you could go off of that. And if they're going to destroy everybody else around it, their investment, that's infringing on their rights. And if they're going to come in and boost that value, great. But I honestly think if people want to put a park in here, then have the city put that out there. Hey, let's get a fundraiser together. Let's get the city to put money into it. We buy that piece of land. We put a park in there to secure that magic that's there, instead of demanding that the people coming in to buy it do it. That to me just doesn't seem the right way to do this. So I just think as citizens, hey, we need to remember the Constitution is what gives us the right to do what we do. It's what gives you guys the right to do what you do. You represent us. You protect our rights. Protect the people's rights that live there. Make sure they don't lose value of their property. That's why you guys demand of them, hey, what's going on? If they lose property value, that's a problem. If they're going to boost it, great. But if we want to secure the magic there, hey, maybe we make it okay for us to put money together, get a fundraiser to build our own park. And then that way it can be ours and it can be magical instead of making these guys do it. That's it.
Thank you.
The part of the burden we carry is, at the end of the day, it's the families who live there that pay for all this. We're providing a service, we're coming in, doing a job, hopefully improving the value of everything. And so anything we do, somewhere in there, families have to be able to afford to come in and actually pay for it. And the idea that, you know, if the city could buy that hill and develop that hill, I mean, I would be absolutely thrilled. I'd donate a lot of engineering to help because it would be so cool. But please understand that that hill is a very big piece of this overhaul property. And so somewhere in there, we have to be able to actually give the owners who've had this for many generations, give them some type of value for their investment and keeping it for all these years. At the same time, we need to be able to come in and actually be able to finish what we're starting. And, you know, there's a lot of pieces here. And so
You understand, it's my personal firm belief that if you do it as a PUD, you can keep and maintain those values over doing it as a straight zone.
And if we had a PUD option right now, we'd both be just happy as could be. So that's what I'd say is we're kind of stuck on a time frame, and that's why we're here asking for consideration.
Crest Staley, Mayor, Council. So I just had a few thoughts. The applicant is applying for R110 residential zoning and a C1 commercial zoning. which is well within their rights to do. I don't know, I think I heard 17 months ago when this issue was at the general plan stage, the land use designations were such that the residential area is low use density. And so the low use density is typically the equivalent of 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre. And the zonings that are allowed in that are an R110, but also an R112. So while as a council from the prior decisions that you've made in the land use designation, you're limiting a little bit your decisions that you're able to make at this point. But one of those options, my experience has been with developers has been generally good, and from what I understand about this project, it's a reputable developer. But my experience has been that developers typically will ask for the highest density that the land use designation allows for. But when this public hearing closes and you're going to deliberate, one of the options would be to not give them the very maximum that land use designation allows for, but all or part of that could be an R112 zoning, which would allow for just a little bit of lots, a little bit bigger lots. As in a neighborhood or commercial land use designation on the commercial piece, it allows for administrative and professional offices or for a C1. So they're asking for the C1, which gives them a little bit more that they can do, but administrative and professional would allow for more of the type of apartments, or not apartments, but excuse me, offices and things of that nature. So you do have some latitude from the point that you're at in the funnel. One other thought is I've heard the idea of PUD bounce around, and PUD is nice. In fact, I was even talking to some of the guys over at Ivans, and they're even considering changing a little bit the way that their subdivisions are passed and come through, because you don't know what the end use is until you've already given the zoning, right? And then the plat's going to come, the preliminary plat, and then the final plat should mirror that. But the further you get down that funnel, the fewer options you have. So this is the give and take right now as the public comes and shares their concerns and their input, and as the developer tries to make this a go monetarily, you kind of have some give and take just based on what part of the process you're in. One thought, and it may not apply totally, but it might be an option, is that further south in the fields, see this piece here is surrounded by, the orange is an R18, so 8,000 square foot lots. A little bit darker yellow is an R110, 10,000 square foot lots. And across the street to the south and to the east are R112 lots. So naturally an R110 or R112 would be appropriate in areas further south where there was agriculture land and where people wanted to maintain a sense of the heritage and the openness. They have used and Drew's going to get mad at me for even bringing this up, but he's as good as they get. So he'll work with you if that's something you want to deliberate. But there's a bonus density program, and Councilman Turk's been here long enough. He understands what that is. And that in the past has been a good opportunity for developers, citizens, and cities to work together to compromise a little bit. So the way that, and you could turn to the code to get exact on this, but the way that works is the city says, okay, we're willing to give you a higher density of lots, basically smaller lots, say 10,000 square feet or 12,000. But in exchange for that, we expect you to do this, this, and this, which could include, access and tree-lined streets and some other different amenities. It's a little bit different process. The reason that it may not completely apply here is because of you've already got a pretty high density with the 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 square foot lots. So it's a little bit different than further south, but that is one area where there may be able to have some give and take. So like I said, as this public hearing closes and you have some deliberation, I just want you to know you have some options. The final decision doesn't have to be made tonight. You have still some time, some room to negotiate within those land use designations for the size of the lots. You have some room to work with what you really want to give as far as commercial. And depending on the expert and what what you think here. You may even be able to come back and get a little bit better idea of a finished product and some give and take by looking at that bonus density program, because that's kind of what it was originally designed for. Was we're taking away fields, which we all love, but in exchange for that, the developer's giving a little bit of something back. And I understand where the developer's coming from, but I also understand where the citizens are coming from, and I certainly understand what you're dealing with right now. Thank you.
Any questions for Chris? Thank you, Chris. Anybody else? Sure.
He wants a PUD. You guys will do a PUD. Jeff.
Come on out, Burke, and let's be official. Let's be official.
Let's use common sense. It seems like he actually said it. It's probably in the minutes. He said it would be done. If we had a PUD, it would be done. What's holding us up?
Well, basically,
Thank you.
Basically, because the PUD itself the concept of PUD is such that you can get these bonus densities, you can cluster, you can have open stuff. You can put as many or more houses in the same area, but they don't have to be rigidly 10,000 square foot lots. You adjust it to bring some benefits that exactly which cities would like to have. We'd love to have that.
It would fit with that angular piece, because there could be some, and an example is my neighbors, the Nilsons. They're on like a 6,500 square foot lot, and they have a pool. Just those two. And so is Heritage Fields, how did that little lot get approved?
It's a PUD.
It is. It's a PUD, but it originally was it like R something, Jeff? Or
Well, it probably came out of an ag zone, became a
I know
PUD
that, yeah.
through that process.
But how can we not do that now?
Well, because again, so getting back to the PUD, at least the concept and the purpose of it, as it was established, kind of a theory in land planning that provided for some flexibility. That's why there's always been that requirement. So if you come with a zone change, because it's straight zoning, you don't have to show anybody what you're thinking about and where those lots are. The give and take of a PUD is this, and that is, and they would be entitled to that R110 anywhere they wanted it. As long as they had 10,000 square feet, they get whatever they bring in later. With PUD, because it's more of an accommodating and common sense process, it's always been a requirement that you actually bring in your concept plan along with it so that it makes sense to have the PUD, because that tells you kind of where we're at. And I don't recall, in 30 years of doing this, I don't recall a development coming into a PUD that didn't have a concept plan with it, because that's what every PUD I've ever seen ordinance has required that for great reasons. Because if you're a neighbor who lives right there, any of those places, if somebody came with an R110, you kind of know what's going to go happen to that 20 acres right next to you. There's going to be 10,000 square foot lot. With a PUD, unless it comes in with a concept plan, you don't know if they're going to cluster 10 of them right next to you on your house, whereas somebody else might be very beneficial for open space for somebody else. And I think that's why the theory is, from the folks that came up with this idea years ago, is for that. So frankly, for you as neighbors would know what's going to be built next to them.
And I think that's what, and I hope I haven't offended you at all.
And I just haven't seen a plan. I thought that was the whole
and
issue.
the guy that talked about the Constitution, I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to get people around the hill. I'd just love to see all that. That's all. And
I think that's exactly the way that our current ordinance stands is exactly, they have to bring their elevations. I mean, they have to show us everything at the PUD approval process. And I think this was the discussion that we were having and saying, hey, can we change our process a little bit that says, here's your PUD zone, and now bring in the conceptuals with it that we work out that gives you
seems like it might be in his best interest to be PUD, because
plating.
there's going to be some areas you can't squeeze can out of, right? Am I correct with all those angles?
It's just the rules that we have for ourselves in our current ordinance doesn't allow us to grant it.
Well, anyway.
As it sits as a PUD.
So yeah, I'm the last person that, as far as private property rights, big believer in that. I just trying to kind of see how it's all going to work. It does have an effect on my place a little bit, because I got to know if my backyard is going to be bigger or smaller, kind of a deal. I'm that little squishy spot
Well,
between
to
the
that
hill
end-
and the house.
To that
Yeah.
end, the
Yeah.
applicant says, well, I'm not going to get any value for that hillside, but the reality is if we do it as a PUD, we can grant
Yeah, I'm just,
density
yeah.
because of giving up that open space for the hillside.
Well, I
That, under R110, we couldn't.
I appreciate your service. This is not easy. And again, I hope we have a beautiful community in there because everybody that's moved in to the Washington Fields is what's made Washington. There's only a few of us that grew up here, and it's everybody else that's made Washington great. Imagine when that's full of great families. It's going to be awesome.
Well,
So-
we didn't expect you as one of the generations lived there for years and years.
I
To bear
get now, quit saying that.
To
I
bear,
just-
to bear the brunt of the fact that somebody's going to come in and just.
No, and
there's
I
got to be a give and take.
I just hope we do something really, really nice because I do think it's the crossroads of the fields.
And how does the council assure that on a PUD unless they see the
Yeah.
concept is coming in so they can protect neighbors and everybody else?
That's why they pay you guys the big bucks.
No.
So,
That's
yeah.
just what our PUD,
Yeah.
that's what it says.
So-
That's what every PUD.
Anyway, I hope we
every
can come up
say.
with the win-win solution because I think this is going to be a great thing if we can make it that way.
Thanks, Burke.
Thank you.
Key to a PUD is having varied and compatible land uses, and it's too bad that we can't integrate them to closer proximity when we do this, but something maybe we can look at for the future.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I'll entertain a motion in to close this public hearing.
Mayor, I'd make a motion to close the public hearing for consideration to approve zone change request Z-17-20.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
IBI.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Nice night.
Turek, aye.
All right, this will be deliberated for a couple of weeks and then a decision made. Item D, public hearing for consideration to approve zone change request Z-17-21 to allow for an extraction overlay zone designation in the Sienna Hills PCD development located at the southeast area of Telegraph Road and Washington Parkway. Applicant, State Institutional Trust Lands, Aaron Langston.
Thank you, Mayor. The applicant is requesting approval to add the extraction overlay zone as you have mentioned. The area requested is approximately 12.42 acres in size. Best way to describe it is that number 18 in that orange color is the area. And if you've been driven down there, it's kind of where that hole is with the rock and everything around. And that's our substation down there, that little square. And you're probably familiar, you've driven by the parcel probably 100 times in a year, but that's basically the area they're asking for. They have a lot of rock there they need to get out for development to take place. As our city ordinances so say is that you can't just haul things off as you develop land. You have to apply for the extraction overlay to take product off and use it somewhere else, especially for sale, et cetera. So that's why we're here before you tonight. So basically, we are talking about parcel 18 to put the extraction overlay zone on. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their May 17, 2017 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-17-21 for the zone change request, adding the extraction overlay zone to the current and existing Sienna Hills PCD. And it's specifically for parcel 18 as shown in the picture on the TV. And that was passed on to you, the City Council. Based on the findings and subject to the conditions, there are 7 of those that are in your report. And we kind of just did an extraction overlay zone up in Green Spring. We pretty much kept those. They were pretty good conditions for this particular area, and they're pretty much the same. The time limit changed a little bit, so all the others pretty much stayed consistent with that. And I'll be glad to answer any questions the council might have.
How did the time limits change?
The days, the other one had 60 days. They're not needing probably that much.
I thought we gave them 45 days.
Well, maybe we did give them 45 days.
With
We
the
probably
time
didn't change
extension for 15.
with the extra 15 for bad weather or other unforeseen problems. So
And their request, State Trust is requesting less?
no, it's actually the same. So You need more? Oh, did you? You may have. I may have made
Yeah, I
a
was gonna say, they got a heck of a lot
type,
more
type
material to
of,
move.
they do, and it probably is, and I apologize for
You
that. That's-
stated it, it's stated in 7 there. It says, stated condition 7 is a mistake. They are asking for 6 months.
Well, did I? So I did get that changed in yours? Okay, good, because mine didn't. I've got the bad one. I thought I did go back and check that. Thank goodness. I'm glad you looked. So it is a 6 month. And that, yeah, that is in your report. I've got the one I went back and changed.
Ours actually says 45 days.
Oh, yours, but
I'm just reading through the minutes where it was
talk
brought up.
about.
The
So,
condition
yeah, so if
was
your
a
report
mistake.
says that it should have been bumped to 6 month, that's the one I didn't get, but we had it in the other. So it is a 6 month. The condition will be for 6 months. Yeah.
Oh, they're next to the park there. What's 17A?
That will be a commercial piece. It's all undeveloped right now. It's just
Okay.
raw ground. That will be a future park. I'm not sure when that, do you guys have a time limit, or do we, or something, Aaron? Is there even a? There you go. So
That's
it's,
your trailhead to your.
yeah, so that's the Hellhead Trail hole is right
the
down there.
Trailhead and park right there.
That's where that is, and there will be a small park area there. So it is 6 months. I apologize. That's what has been requested, and it
So
is in the
ultimately, what we're
minutes. So
talking here is just the extraction of that gravel and whatnot, the rock that's in there, so it
big rock.
becomes a developable piece of property.
Right,
basically.
they've got a,
They can break it up and crush it and do whatever they need to on site. It's getting.
Who knows what kind of treasures you're gonna find in there? Because I remember as a young man dumping lots of trash in that hole out there. So,
and there was
that
a
was the
land-
city dump when I was
well,
growing up.
17B is the majority of where that landfill used to be. That's why they moved the park there. It was designated different when the original was approved for Sienna Hills, but then when they went and did some discovery on the property, they found that the landfill was actually under where 17B is right now. So we changed that in a previous amendment. So that's where you'll definitely find some good treasures in 17B. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. Again, the Planning Commission recommended unanimously the approval of the extraction zone.
They're not
Any
using
questions,
crusher on this side, are they?
I'm not sure. I'll divert that to Aaron, let
If they
him.
did, they'd be able to move more material quicker.
Yeah, so we'll,
I was hoping they would.
I don't know, Aaron, if you want to come up and just maybe address that question if you can.
Aaron with Sitla. I don't know how much information to put out here. We've had a little, maybe I could use the word hiccup in our plans here. Just to give a little bit of history on this, and Councilman Turek is exactly correct. This parcel 17 that was on the map is in fact the old landfill. We had soils engineers out there. We had them pothole everything, and as was explained,
And they probably went, oops, right?
we found a lot of his trash actually as we pulled that up, old receipts and stuff. Yes.
It's called antiques in today's world. It's probably worth a lot of money. So
Hopefully we'll be able to make a lot of money off that. Yes. But yeah, we did redefine the park boundary based on where that landfill was, because obviously we're not going to be able to build on it. So one of the things that we'll be looking at doing to mitigate that park is to bring in fill. So a lot of the material that we're trying to remove from this pad so that we can deliver a developable pad will actually be placed on top of the landfill.
So just moving it
So,
across.
so that's one thing, but to step back even a little bit further, and this is probably neither here nor there, but this land in question, specifically parcel 18, came to the state. There's a history with it. The city was involved at one point. Prior to that, the BLM was involved. And when the BLM disposes of land, as the state does, they retain the mineral rights. In so doing, for us to get rid of the mineral rights, we have to go through their process, which is
A process.
long and a process, to say the least, which is why our asking for 6 months is probably going to be insufficient, if anything. That said,
Well, what we did up there was we said the clock would start ticking when they were ready to start
Once
exporting.
we get going, and we would appreciate that if we could, because we really have no control on how long the process will take as the feds dictate the process. So simply all we're trying to do is say, look, we know that a bunch of the material that's on there, we will actually need on site. Part of it for the park, part of it to build up the commercial pad, part of it to build up the residential pad. So we know that we'll need a lot of material. What's left, we obviously don't want to keep on the pad forever. We're going to want to export it, whether that goes up Washington Parkway and goes up to Grapevine Road so that we'll have material to finish there, or whether we just want to stockpile it closer. We just want the ability to be able to move the material to where it makes sense.
I assume your plans are to use all the material within Sienna Hills as much as possible.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, that is one of the stipulations imposed on us by the BLM. So the material will remain within the project.
When you say mineral rights, was that the pitcher stone?
Basically, it's going to be any surface material. So they can harvest, we could harvest rock out of it. We could harvest minerals. We could crush it. I mean, just whatever is there.
Aaron, how much fill do you anticipate to put on that park area? Do you know? Because of course, with now realizing, because at one time we maybe thought such structures as the restroom facilities and other things might not actually be on. But knowing that now.
Yeah, I'll have Craig answer that. He's the technical guy there.
Craig Coates with Alliance Consulting. We did some preliminary layout for Sitla a couple months back. And because of the restroom, our plan is to not put the restroom facilities or anything like that on the landfill area. Essentially, you can see where the road-based road is currently right there. Our plan would be essentially put the restroom, the landfill is basically, that's the edge of the old landfill, is where that road base is. So essentially we would move the restrooms just to the east side of that road. And that would be kind of the parking lot area. And then all the park and field area would be to the west there. That's the preliminary concept. Because of that landfill, we can't put any structures on it. Even parking lot, we can't put on it.
Any other questions or comments for Aaron? Again, this is a public hearing. I know you are all waiting anxiously to talk about this one.
My name is Jim Black. I live at 397 East Rocco Road. Having a little experience with previous landfill areas, I'm wondering if there has been any toxicological studies with respect to radon, methane, and other gases that may be emitted there.
Oh, no. I don't know, sir.
Seems like that needs to be seems like that needs to be taken care of before the city would make a decision on this.
Thank you.
Just to touch on that, we do have an environmentalist compliance officer in Salt Lake. We will absolutely have to do that. I know that we have done a lot of preliminary studies on that. It's not completely finished, but absolutely. Yeah, we're looking into that. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mayor, I'd make a motion to close the public hearing for consideration to approve zone change request Z-17-21 to allow for an extraction overlay zone.
Second that.
Motion and a second.
IBI.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I, but I just want to note that I know that toxicology was brought up, but this is for an extraction overlay, not, building or other site. Really all we're doing is approving being able to move material off that site onto other Sienna Hills sites, so.
Still a good question.
That's a whole separate issue other than this, what we're approving or what we're discussing tonight is whether or not they can move material from parcel 18 to any other parcel. That's all we're approving.
That's an aye.
Turek, aye.
All right, thank you. Move on to item E, public hearing for consideration to approve zone change request Z-17-22 to amend the planned community development, the PCD for Sienna Hills, which will amend the site plan map. The land use legend table and verbiage in the project plan text. The request is located approximately on the east side of Washington Parkway. Again, the applicant is Sitla.
Hey, Mayor, I'll try to put my seatbelt on and get all of this. Is one. It's got a lot happening. We'll try to get through this one as best we can. As stated, the applicant is requesting approval of an amended Sienna Hills PCD of portions thereof. And more specifically, we'll be directing our proposal towards the site plan map, the land use designation table that you see here, and then also the text that's found in section 3.1B of the PCD project plan. More specifically, the changes in section 2, the site plan map. The amendment is to update the Sienna Hills PCD site plan map and all the series of them. There's subsequently, I think, 12 maps that have all kinds of different things to them. They didn't try to stuff everything on one. So all of those will subsequently have to make these changes with the different parcels that will be changing as well. So it affects, this page one is the main one, but it will then carry through with all the subsequent ones that show the different parcels and their numbers. So just to make clear, that's why the S behind the maps. Certain areas have been revised, including parcels 5, 6, 7, 8, and parcel 16. The proposal is to change the configuration of parcels 5 and 7, which are designated as low-density developments. The proposed changes the use and designation of parcels 6 and 8 from low-density residential to the medium-density residential, respectively, and they will be going to multifamily residential designation. Lastly, parcel 16 is being changed from the multifamily residential to a neighborhood commercial designation. All these are elaborated on conditions below, but as stated, so 5 and 7 do not change their use, but their configuration, how they lay out, changes. They found some soil problems right here at that brown area that it runs along 5 and 6. That's actually where there used to be another parcel layout. But because of that, they then had to reconfigure 5, 6, 7, and 8. So now parcels 6 and 8 do get a change of use. They are going from, again, a single family residential to multifamily residential designations, just to help make up for some of the densities they've lost from the change in the land that they can't use because of bad soils. So, and parcel 16 down here in the bottom is being changed from the multifamily residential to a neighborhood commercial because of a future tenant that is in contract with them, that the use is more fitting to be in a neighborhood commercial. And so that's the changes on the map, briefly. And the changes in the written text of the project plan book, specifically section 3, design guidelines, and that will fall specifically under 3.8C, changing the verbiage for an increase in allowable building height. The changes elaborated on in the conditions. And if I may just jump there to the conditions, if you go to condition number 3, section 3, design guidelines amended as follows. Chapter 3.8C, building height, is proposed to read as follows. The building height, a building height limit of 35 feet will be maintained throughout the multifamily residential zones where zoning is less than or equal to 16 dwelling units per acre. For parcels 14A and 18, where the dwelling units are 22 units per acre, and in the commercial zones where approved by the city, 4-story buildings are anticipated and a maximum height of 55 feet will be maintained. Now, it doesn't mean every building is going to be there, but they may need to take advantage of that on certain ones, as I need to point out. A building height of 35 feet will be maintained throughout the single-family detached zones. Any request to exceed these height limitations must be approved by the city and will constitute an amendment to the PCD. The height limitations also include any roof-mounted HVAC equipment. So that's what is changed in the verbiage that they needed because of future possible development within the PCD. So we felt, as Aaron and I talked, it'd be best just to make that amendment right at this time as well. So that's the crux of the request on the zone change. The Planning Commission held a public hearing, reviewed this request at their May 17th, 2017 meeting. The Planning Commission recommended approval. And again, I apologize, I didn't fix that, but the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-1722 for the zone change request, amending portions of the Sienna Hills PCD to the City Council, and that's based on the findings and subject to the conditions that you see in your report. I'll be glad to answer any questions the council might have on this proposal.
Now, was the school not going to be there? It seemed like I heard that at one time.
Have you heard anything about that, Aaron, or is it?
They own the parcel.
They still own it.
I don't know when, but
Yeah, that's that piece right there. It's almost in somewhat of the heart of the whole development. Is that beautiful 4A1? It is owned by the school. I haven't heard anything different. Now, it may be down the road quite a ways, but then again, that can change. Sienna Hills builds out and all the young families move in.
Any questions for Drew or Aaron? Again, it's a public hearing. Any of you out there that want to comment? Ten, nine, 8, 7, 6. You want to comment, Aaron?
maybe just to say one thing. Maybe it was mentioned and I didn't hear it. All of the parcels that Drew mentioned are exactly as is. There was a small change on parcel 4 as well. What you now see is parcel 4C. Previously, that was part of 5. So we've just kind of switched that over because it's just going to make more sense how that lines up. If you go out there and look at the topography with the hill and everything, it just made more sense to slide it one way. So anyway, 4C is a slight change from what the previous version was. There's no change in density or no change of anything else. So I just wanted to make the council aware that that was a little bit different than the last version.
Thank you. I entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we close the public hearing for consideration to approve zone change request Z-17-22.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Nice night.
Ellison, aye.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Thank you. All right, move on to item F, public hearing for consideration in transferring used assets and a proposed sewer fund to the Fleet Internal Service Fund. Administrative Services Director.
Mayor.
It's quite a title.
I know. It's a little bigger than I am. This is a public hearing to specifically get comments from the citizens. This was a legislative law change that took place back in 2014, so that anytime that we're going to be transferring assets or making contributions that from an enterprise fund to another fund, it requires public noticing. So this was a separate notice. It's required that it's mailed out separately and that the public hearing is held separately. The items that are noted in here are in conjunction with the proposed budget that will come later, but the public hearing for this purpose is separate. So what we are proposing is that we have some older vehicles that were originally purchased by different enterprise funds, and those vehicles will be transferred to the fleet division for management, and they can be used by other divisions within the city. And as extra vehicles, for when vehicles are brought into the shop for repairs, we would have loaner vehicles available for those departments to use while their vehicles are under repair. So they'll all stay within the city fleet. We're just transferring the management of those from the original departments that purchased them over to the fleet division. And then with the proposed budget, we are proposing that the sewer fund make a contribution to the fleet division in order for an administrative vehicle to be purchased and used that will be shared amongst the entire organization.
Does it cost us to send that letter out?
It was about $4,500.
A good
I've got mine right here.
That's one of those things you can thank the state for.
Right, and so if we really only had one vehicle, it would still cost us
That's correct.
$4,500 to notify it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we need to talk to them. Yeah.
What was interesting about that whole issue is I thought Kimberly did a fantastic job of writing the letter, but we had 4 or 5 citizens that called up and wondered why their 2008 Ford Ranger was being transferred to a city division. And so again, it's just what is intended in good nature to offer clarity, the state imposes on us sometimes doesn't happen.
So unless you have any other questions, then we'll.
Any questions for Kimberly? Okay, again, it's a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen. Any questions or comments on that? This is actually a public hearing that we can vote on afterwards.
Mayor, just for clarity, there's no action that's actually necessary for this.
It's just the process that
Yes.
has to go through.
Notification.
And I can appreciate what the state tried to do with that. I mean, they want to make it so it's open and the public understands. So there are some communities out there that do move funds or in the past have done that behind closed doors. And so I can appreciate the state trying to. Sometimes those of us that are already adhering to those laws, it becomes an expensive,
Well,
but
it might be that they could set a 2-tiered structure for how much we
Yeah,
are
size of communities,
doing that.
exactly,
Well,
probably
or the
a good idea.
size of movement of
Yeah.
vehicles, for example,
Yeah.
so that we're not incurring a $4,500 bill for a $9,000 vehicle,
Yeah.
which we could.
Certainly. No, that's a good point. Good point.
All right, thank you, Kimberly, for that clarification. Anybody?
With that, Mayor, not seeing anybody come forward, I'll make the motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Allison, aye.
Nice night.
Eric, aye.
All right, item H, public hearing for consideration to adopt the Washington State Transportation Impact Fee. Oh, wait a minute, do we need to do G?
Jay.
Sorry, I'm anxious. Consideration to approve a resolution approving the transfer of assets and funds from the sewer fund to the Fleet Internal Service Fund.
Require action, just the public hearing.
Oh, okay.
So you don't need a resolution on it? All right. We should have amended that agenda, huh?
Yeah, we'll move on. Item H, public hearing for consideration to adopt the Washington State Transportation Impact Fee.
Thank you, Mayor. Several months back, we decided that we'd review our transportation master plan or impact fee. So several months back, we decided we were going to be reviewing our transportation impact fee. With that, we looked at the projects that we had. The previous impact fee was calculated off of a 10-year window. State law has changed since then to where we can only do a 6-year window. So we lowered down the number of projects we were looking at. We also looked at the way we're charging some of our commercial units, and what those were are pass-by trips, which are trips that are not generated to that location solely. It's going from one location to another, and they'll stop at this trip. And specifically, one of the ones was very high was daycares. So when you're going to a daycare, you're usually leaving home, going to the daycare, dropping a child off, and then on your way to work. So your primary trip was to your work, not to the daycare. But with that, we actually reduced our fee from $3,159 to $2,332. So a reduction of $827 for each residential equivalent.
So basically, that brings all our impact fees down across the board.
Correct, because all of our commercial are based off of a residential equivalent. And that's in the table, it actually has that.
All of our fees associated with the transportation.
Right.
Yes. So yes, you're correct, it did. So in turn, all of the fees for all of the commercial came down, as well as some of the ones where we reduced their pass-by trips.
I just hope people are noticing we've actually reduced something.
This is our second time reducing
Yeah.
the fee. The last time we reduced our sewer impact fee a few months back.
Thank you, Mike.
It is. And I don't think we'll see any opposition.
If it seems like there's a lack of discussion, just to note, we had a long discussion last night in workshop and went over this pretty extensively. So.
Thanks, Mike. Any disagreement to reduction of your fees out there? All right, I'll entertain a motion to close that public hearing.
I was gonna say, let's open it, let them come talk.
All right.
Yeah, we.
Okay.
Go ahead and open your public hearing.
Okay, I make a motion to open, this is a public hearing. Those of you that want to make a comment on this, you're welcome to come up.
Craig Coates is a resident this time. I'm all about reducing the fees, but I'm sure you guys have hashed it out. I'm just concerned about, we have a lot of roads, we got to pay for them. We don't have commercial to pay for them, and we're reducing the rates. I'm just concerned about it, but I'm sure you guys hashed it out, so.
Yeah.
Craig, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, part of that, of course, has to do with the change in the law on the horizon of planning we now have.
Yeah, that's the biggest one is we used to plan 10 years. We're now down to 6 years in our planning. So as reflected to that fee.
But we'll find a user fee to assess you to help us out.
An engineering fee.
Thanks, Craig.
Mayor, barring any other discussion, I'd make a motion to
Close the public hearing.
Huh?
You need to close the public hearing.
Well, I'll
first.
make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
And I'll second that motion.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Fellas, aye.
Nice night.
Keurig, aye.
Thank you all. Item I, consideration to approve an ordinance adopting the Washington City Transportation Impact Fee.
Now you're ready for
Now I
yours.
can do it?
Yeah.
Okay, Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the ordinance adopting the Washington City Transportation Impact Fee.
And I'll second that motion.
Keurig, aye.
Nice night.
Fellas, aye.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Thank you. Item J,
Mayor,
public.
just, can I mention real
Yes.
quick, just for those who might be watching, now again, by state statute, this does not go into effect for 90 days. So all fees will stay in place until the 90-day mark.
Thank you, City Manager. Item J, public hearing for consideration to adopt the 2017-2018 budget for Washington City. Kimberly.
So Mayor and Council, back on May 10th, you were presented with the tentative budget that was accepted by the council. It's been available for review during this time. The total budget for the city that's proposed for 2018 is $55,713,948. And of that, there's a general fund budget of $16,004,784. Or excuse me, $89. There are two items that have changed since the original tentative budget came in May. In the general fund, we received our certified tax rate from the county. And with the tax growth that we had, there was an additional $32,000 in revenue that was received. That allowed us to increase the amount of money that we'd be appropriating towards fund balance. And that is now $177,288. And then we did also propose a part-time building inspector position that we have added at $32,000. $32,187. And then the Coral Canyon Special Service District, it also showed an increase of $54,000, and that was also a direct result of the certified tax rate and the new growth that came with that. And it's being appropriated to fund balance towards future debt service payments. So those were the only changes since the presentation was made to you in May.
Thank you, Kimberly. Any questions for her? Again, a public hearing. We invite any input on our budget.
Daniel Clough. I've had an interesting perspective of budgets since I've been a part of the Power Board. And Power Board, we were also taught about the budget and concerns. Kelly Carlson acted as our mentor for the past year. And if you have had any interactions with Kelly, he does everything thorough. And if anything else, he does not say anything unless he either knows it or is concerned about it. And a little bit of back history, I was very much anti a lot of things that I thought were going on in the city until I joined the Power Board. And since then, I have swallowed much of my pride and have been considered, educated out of those positions. And that's what I appreciate about Kelly. Kelly Carlson, in his final meeting with us before he retired, he brought up a concern that he had. And one of the line item costs, he brought up 53530-4346. There has been some changes in our cost allocations, and I've had that explained back and forth. My biggest concern that I have concerning this cost allocation and the shift in changes that have happened is that in no uncertain terms, Kelly went and he taught us to this level and said that the council has authority in which they may zero out any particular item in a budget into a budget amendment. And the thing that he asked us to do in no uncertain terms is to freeze that cost allocation and have it be frozen until it's expanded upon. That was something he said passionately, and I think he repeated it, if I have my tally marks right, 8 times. And so I take that very seriously because I know that Kelly does not say anything without any form of passion and background. The other thing, and keep in mind of this, that Kelly has attended the meetings since 2014 discussing cost allocations and how that would shift. And even to the point of his retirement, he felt like it was not sufficient enough. And so my recommendation, my hope is that the council would take that public employees consideration very heavily, not as a light item, because I don't think he was saying it out of any malintent or lack of education for the matter. And I don't know why he would have that concern because I don't see it to the level and the degree that he does. So I think it should be honored in that point to freeze that, pass the budget as it is, but freeze that particular item, which is the administration costs. And on here it says 356,000 to 594,000. And just thought there was some concern that should be vetted out more.
I can appreciate your position. I get a little bit concerned when we start saying we're going to freeze anything in a budget.
Correct.
Simply for the fact that who knows what tomorrow's changes bring to those types of things. It may be that we would want to decrease that because of different way we begin to allocate or we begin to operate that department differently. And so I can see it be a sword that cuts both ways possibly. So I can certainly appreciate your, I guess, being his voice here tonight, for lack of a better term.
Fair.
But my concern would be to freeze anything, because usually we look back to our administrative services departments who vet those things out very deeply. I mean, they go through quite an analysis process, especially in the allocation process, because those things become challengeable by law. And so it isn't by willy-nilly that they grab a number and say, we're going to plug it in here. I mean, it's got to be proven that says, here's the true allocations and how we figure those things. And so I guess I would trust that department when they put that number in as to where that comes from. Having walked through that process with this particular one, I feel very comfortable with that number that's there. There again, next year, it may fluctuate one way or the other. So that's where my concern with freezing would become.
Any other questions for Daniel?
No, appreciate your bringing it up.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Doug Ward. So I have some concerns as I've looked through the budget. I can't find the light item in the budget for shafting the downtown residents with a freeway off-ramp. And I apologize for bringing this up at this time of your budget meeting, but we've asked, and I know that the mayor responded to us, but it was just yesterday. We've asked to have something heard about this. We feel like we're being intentionally delayed. we've talked in this meeting endlessly about R12 to R10, but we're not considering an event that would literally destroy the value of hundreds of homes within our community. It would change the entire nature of that. I know that we have an environmental assessment that's already been funded and that our money has already gone towards this, but forgive me if I don't feel comfortable with a program that was set up by the federal government to primarily protect the environment by an organization who admits that they have never done one that has not been passed, who also believes that if it does get passed, they firmly believe that they will get the engineering contract to design the off-ramp. You've got a conflict of interest there. It feels
Mr.
like—
Ward, let me interject a little bit here. For the mere fact this public hearing is about our budget.
I know it is.
And what you're discussing has nothing to do with our budget.
I know it doesn't. But
So
there's a lot of
why would you
individuals
waste
who
the
have
time
come.
of these good people to hear?
These good people, most of these good people came here because of this issue.
But this is not on the agenda to be heard.
I know we've asked for it to be on the agenda.
Well,
We've
that's
begged for it
something
to
you
be
can
on the
take up with the
agenda.
mayor and in future meetings. I don't think that it's right that we hijack a public hearing of one thing to suddenly bring up something
What
else.
we
That's my
fully planned on being shut down with this, but we've been shut down with this all along. Folks, I feel like I know you. I've watched you in your efforts. I've seen you. I would guess that every single one of you have come to this position because of some sense of duty and wanting to serve your community. But this doesn't represent you. I see you when you go towards things, when you look at things that you're proud of, you shout them from the rooftops. You're not shouting this from the rooftops. This has been hidden. This has been hard to get under information about. This has been—
All due respect, I don't think anybody's, I certainly haven't shied away from having a conversation about an interchange or any of that. But, and you mentioned the environmental assessment. It's not about, air, water, ground. It's the environmental conditions.
I know that's what they say,
like
but I don't take a lot of
until
comfort in that from a group who has never turned one down, who has never not recommended the environmental assessment they've put through. That's what they admit.
Okay, so, but you understand, until the data comes back with recommendations.
But why
you
are
don't have the
we
data to even do it.
why are we requesting this without extensive public hearings, without input from the community that would be
So the first time
directly harmed?
I saw an email requesting a public hearing on the interchange was a couple of weeks ago.
It's been over a month. Dan, do you have that?
Mr. Ward, can I explain where we're to in the process? This may help.
You'd be surprised at what I don't know about the
Well,
process.
okay, let me tell you where the because we had this discussion last night. Basically is how do we move forward? Where do we happen here? And so basically the process at this point, there has been no decisions made. We know that we have a problem we're looking for solutions at. The decision or the discussion that took place last night is let's form a group of citizens from the downtown to some part of Sienna, a citizen group out of the community to sit down and say, here's the problem. What are some solutions and what do we come up with?
But why would
That's
that
where
be
we're
start after the city has already expended money to go and fund an environmental assessment through the NPO? I get it. It's
Correct.
not direct.
Well, part of that is looking at even is it an option? I mean, that's what that environmental tells us is saying, are there even some options
I want
here?
to desperately believe that we're going to explore all options in order to protect the community that many of us live in. I mean, it's.
You understand, we're trying to forecast roads 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And it's not just the interchange. There's a lot of roads in the city that we're looking at. Do they need to be done now or later?
This
or
environmental
what's the
impact does
process?
not have to do with other roads.
No,
Other
that's
roads-
this road. But it's part of the process of the overall.
And I've been told that. I've been told that this was 20 years down the road. But when you talk to the
No.
engineering firm,
What I-
well,
what I said was
I've been
we're
told
trying to
every number
forecast
in the
all kinds
world.
of roads down the road.
The problem is that the environmental impact that you've already paid for is only good for 5 years. You're looking at an event that people are trying to push through in about 7 years. Or why would you pay money for an engineering firm to come out and do the impact now? I mean, you have to recognize why people would fear for a freeway off-ramp to be put in their homes. It seems like a nuclear option. It seems like we should have exhausted every single other possibility before. It would be the only freeway off-ramp. that would exist in Utah that would exit directly into a residential neighborhood. I'm not proud of that. You're not proud of that.
I don't know that that's the case.
Look it up, because your engineering
Pretty
firm and
close.
your DOT representatives will back me up on that.
Mayor, real quick, just in regards to the previous hearing, and just to avoid some confusion, Mr. Ward is correct. We have not funded anything that's shafting the citizens in the budget. So that point is correct with respect to this issue. And so would it be possible at least to close that down? Would you want to continue this discussion or not? Close down that part of the public hearing so there's no confusion on what the public hearing is associated with.
Yeah, I sent an email out to Cheryl.
Correct, and
maybe she
I'm a
passed
part of
that on.
that. She passed that on to us. It really feels like we were delayed to the point where the environmental assessment could get done. And
The environmental hasn't even started.
It's been funded.
It's been funded. That's as far as it's gone. But if we spend that, if we just chose today not to go forward, the funds are, they give them back. It doesn't have to go.
Let's do it then. Let's
I think that's
let's
what this,
request.
I think
let's-
that's what this group is being formed about, is exactly that, to sit down and say, is this an option that we want to move forward and look at? You can have your own opinion of it.
I do.
I can understand you grandstand. I understand the political process and what's happening here. I understand. I've been there, danced that dance. But at the same token, I think it's only fair for the community to have a chance to look at and explore this whole thing.
But that's the fear of the community, is that we're being left out. We
Well,
tried.
I just got done telling you, you're going to be invited as many. I don't know how the mayor's
We
setting
keep
up.
being
It's the
told,
mayor's
but it
process.
feels like it's after the process already started. After things are.
Let me
already
tell you, the
getting
process
We-
is not started. It's
I-
not starting.
Doug, it's not started.
and I
Hold
really
on,
said-
hold on. This will solve it. July 11th.
I'll be out of town. And so
Well, then all of you that can make it, come.
So that's the beginning of the process.
This is the beginning of the
I
process.
mean, you're saying that this thing's.
There's a
it
process that
hasn't
needs to
started.
happen. This
I'm
will
not
begin
saying
the
that they are.
process.
I'm saying from the perspective of individuals who have looked into this and tried to get answers, it feels like that.
Well, I can tell you,
It's just
most of
scary.
these council, this is the first time they've heard a lot of this.
I would be.
And I don't know
would
if
be
they're ready at
surprised
this
if
point.
Most of the members of the council knew how hard that some factions are actually pushing this to go through. It's been very difficult.
Which
It's
faction?
It got this far without members of the council actually knowing what is going on.
Well,
You
some of
tell
us
me.
are newer to the council.
Sorry?
How long are you saying this has been going on?
When we went through the plan to put forward the 5-year plan for the
Correct.
city, people came. It wasn't put out on the survey.
Actually, I want to stop you because I think it's really disrespectful to the way the council does its business and the agenda that needs to be published if these things are put on to talk about, so other people know that there will be a discussion about this. This isn't on our agenda, and you're continuing to carry on and on and on. I will work hard to be informed. We will work hard to make sure you're informed, but this is improper.
You asked me a question. I'd like the opportunity to answer
No,
that question.
I really don't want to hear the answer.
Mayor, I was asked a question. Can I please proceed with the answer?
Sure.
Where this started, the process for putting forth the plan for the city plan was put out there. People responded to the survey. It wasn't anything winter on there. People came to the open houses and asked, and they were told, no, it's not part of it. This is all DOT. This has nothing to do with us. And when it came down to it, it was actually our city who was pushing for the DOT to start the process with the environmental assessment. And the week before the plan was put together, it showed up on the plan. That feels wrong. That doesn't feel like Little St.
Let me
George.
correct that too, because
Please do.
that's inaccurate. As a matter of fact, if you're talking about the general plan,
Yes.
it was very specific in the general plan that it was going to be Main Street initially in the drafts. And then this council said, we want to keep in the fact that there's going to be, we are going to consider an interchange, but we want to call it Main Street because we don't know. They're the ones that made that verbiage change as far as them being involved and that being clear from the very beginning that at least it was being pursued. That has always been pursued through all of those meetings and those open houses. And you don't want, and I hope you would not be this, a council that doesn't look to the future and try to look at all the options, especially when they've got problems that individual citizens in many cases don't have the concern to worry about, but they do by nature of their role as council. And that's interchange 10 right there. That is a problem that this council is looking at. And you want a council
that will look into the future and pursue every option. And when the decision comes, I feel comfortable, as they've always performed in times past, that they will engage the public. But you do not want a council that's just going to shove their head in the ground and say, I'm not going to look at every single option that's out there. And that's what this council is doing. That's all they're saying, is this is one of the many options that will be pursued. And to tell them to not to do that, I think is extremely short-sighted and not what they're
I'm not
tasked to
saying
do.
to not do that, but I've heard repeatedly that there is no other way. And the problem with saying that there is no
You
other
need
way,
to be concerned about what you're hearing.
I've heard it from multiple individuals who were city employees. You want me to write down their names? I mean,
The
but
five
they're
individuals that allocate the funds
not of the city
to
council,
move forward on
of
anything
employees
we're
that
here,
they
and we
believe.
don't
The problem with the
meet
saying,
outside of a public meeting.
the problem with saying that there is no other way is we quit looking at options.
And this
Folks,
council
I
has never
have-
said there is no other way.
if
So
I
you've heard it
didn't
from
have-
this council that we're not saying there is no other way.
And do you know what the city staff is currently working on with other roads to try to alleviate the problem that is really trying to be addressed?
I know that after the environmental assessment has actually started, that I have seen a few things go through.
Those have been in the works, and with all due respect, those have been in the works for many, many years.
But there have been individuals, it's been hard to get information
Well,
out of this.
that's kind of a cheap comment. There's been individuals, but not a willingness to bring it forward. You can say
Fine,
that all day.
discount what I'm saying, but I wouldn't come and I wouldn't bring this before the council if I didn't have faith and trust in you folks. It's something we feel strongly enough to have spent all night here, coming and presenting it before you.
Well,
We trust you and we
I
have
can
faith.
certainly appreciate everybody showing up, but unless we publicly notice an agenda and with the statutory time frame, we're
This is
technically not even
inappropriate.
allowed to discuss it. So the fact that you bring it up in a budget discussion line item, by law, we're not even supposed to be discussing.
What if we decided to discuss this and you had not been noticed?
I'm not asking for a discussion tonight.
Oh, you're conducting
I
a
am
discussion
conducting a
tonight.
discussion, and you have been amazingly patient with my inquiry. I am simply asking to put a pause to the environmental impact until people can actually be informed and people can come together. And I don't feel like we've had the opportunity to do that until this time, and would not have taken this had the council responded to our previous requests. I'm
Well-
sorry that you missed the first and you only caught the next.
Which request are you talking about?
And a letter was hand delivered to the mayor and was emailed, how did Cheryl send it to the council? Mayor?
Email it out.
Emailed it
Yeah,
out?
it was the hard Washington.
And since
Mayor,
that-
can you recall how long ago that was?
May 3rd.
May 3rd, yeah.
Since that, because we all got it.
Right.
Since that letter has gone out, we've had discussions privately, one-on-one, but we don't discuss, we're not allowed by law to have discussions about anything unless it's in a public forum that's been noticed up, to have them as a group. I mean, I can talk to Councilman Turek, but I can't talk to Councilman Nyson and Turek and Granger and Ivy at the same time without having a public forum.
You can't talk to two at the same time because that's the majority. We
So-
can't do that.
Well,
But we also shouldn't be discussing something that's not agendized, because while you brought some people with you, there are other people who have no idea this discussion is going on. That wouldn't be fair to you if we did it, and it's not fair to them.
It actually would have been much more appropriate last night because it was an agenda item that was discussed. I may miss the agenda last night because we discussed it and it was on the agenda. That's where the decision was made to bring this community group together.
And it's back on the agenda for July 11th.
I don't have a problem with your dialogue, but I do have a problem with your method.
Well, I thank you again for your patience. You've been very patient, and I realize that I was somewhat hijacking your meeting, but it is something that citizens feel very strongly about. Thank you.
And we realize and we appreciate that. And hopefully that with the group we put together, citizens become a part of finding those solutions. That's what we want to do, is work together as a community to say, what are all the options out there? What's best going to benefit our community? And then we come back to the council and make those recommendations out of that.
Thank you. Please don't go all Hiroshima on Washington City.
Thank you. Is this another discussion about this?
Jeremy Anderson, this is what I'm here for. Is the budget.
Are you going to talk about the budget?
I understand that you guys stand on this the way that you do, and thanks to Doug Ward, I was informed of coming out here to make a point, and I'm not here to necessarily back up. He said everything that needed to be said. But being a big advocate of studying the Constitution, the founding of this nation, I felt that the way that Doug Ward was addressed was inappropriate versus the other way around. I am so grateful for the city council and what they represent and what they do, but I hate the fact that I have to stand up and repeat the words of Thomas Jefferson that said, "It is the duty of the citizens of the nation to criticize and to critique the leaders." And when Doug Ward comes up here and mentions, "Hey, we have something, we've requested something from you guys, and it took over a month before anybody heard anything," I honestly think that as citizens of this city, we should be the first thing that you guys address. The people should be the first thing that you address because they are the ones that put you where you're at, and you are civil servants. You serve us. We don't serve you. That's the way it works. You are us. We are the same. We are people of this city. And to sit here and call Doug out as someone being inconsiderate or out of play, well, maybe you guys should have emailed him back the day after he sent it out initially. That would have been the appropriate thing. The fact that we had to show up here tonight is what's inappropriate. We, the people, run this nation. We, the people, are in charge of this city. We, the people, make the decisions. Remember that. I don't want to have to get on anybody's bad side or to cause problems, but we need to remember. Read the Constitution, read where the rights come from, read the Utah Constitution, read where rights come from, and remember that we have unalienable rights, and you cannot trump those. And it is your job to defend them. He has a right to speak, regardless of your agenda. He has a right to speak, and if he has not been replied to in a month, please be patient with him and be understanding and give him an answer, because he does represent several people. He represents me, because he's the one that informed me, and I appreciate his efforts. And when the city council chastises him, you're chastising the people. Don't do that. We chastise you, you take it humbly, and you accept that because you are civil servants. You are not our kings, you are not our queens. Please accept that, and we are grateful for your service. Please continue to serve us.
Thank you.
Dan Drown. I wanted to come up and comment and thank everyone who worked hard on a almost $56 million budget. And I want to get the conversation back on the budget so I can go eat my dinner.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else on the budget? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Are we on item K?
Vote on it.
Yeah, let's vote on it.
Turek, aye.
Nice and I.
Don't we have to make the motion?
He did.
We made the motion.
Okay.
Done.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Thank you. Move on to item 11, report of officers from assigned committee. Anything to report?
Actually, you want to go to K, you've got to accept your budget.
Oh, yeah. Consideration to approve a resolution accepting the 2017-2018 fiscal year budget.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we approve the budget that has been placed before us this evening. Certainly appreciate those members of our community that have come to discuss the budget. And in fact, I think this is in the 11 years I've served on the council, this is the largest group we've ever had and the most comment we've ever had on a budget. So it's nice to have a community that's here and involved in the budgeting process and whatnot. So with that, I'll make the motion that we approve the budget as has been presented.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Motion and second.
Turek, aye.
Nice and I.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
All right, thank you. That's approved. We'll move on to item 11, report of officers from assigned committees. Anything to report?
Now, our legislative meetings start again Monday, I think, the hearings that are open, if anyone ever wants to plug in and listen to them, so.
Just a reminder, tomorrow is the tour of the water treatment facility, 11 o'clock. Invitation by Ron Thompson, so. Item 12, city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me just update you on a few projects that are going on that the council and public might have an interest in. Our Red Cliffs water tank, the plan should be completed here shortly, so we can start to review those. We're working, as we've mentioned before, on the water master plan. That draft should be available also shortly. We'll begin reviewing that with you as well. We've mentioned this before, but we had a review from the manufacturer. They came out and reviewed our wastewater treatment or water treatment plant, not wastewater, water treatment plant out here to see what potential there is for additional capacity. And they've kind of come back and said it looks like we might have between 1 and 1.5 million gallons a day more additional capacity that might be available to us. And this is important because, as you know, our treated water we can treat a little cheaper than the purchased water, as we talked about last night. So that'll be something we'll work some more on. It's not to the council yet, money-wise, we haven't got all that yet, but we'll work on that and bring that back. Irrigation master plan should be available in August. This will be, of course, in a draft format at that point. As you remember, we're looking at kind of where we can. The irrigation master plan was done in about 06, I think, or 07, right in there, the last revision, right? And at that time, it didn't look feasible to pressurize any irrigation stuff. We don't know if it will be feasible, but this will be part of that plan because, of course, that secondary water use will be important to us, I think, in the future. And with the increasing costs of culinary water through the district too, that might become more and more cost effective for us. With regards to the sewer, the 1100 East trunk line design will be complete in July. The fairway line, the sewer line there, should also be completed in July. I know everybody's been very patient with the Main Street stormwater project, but that'll be a great benefit to Main Street with the flood issues that we've had earlier. That project should conclude around the first week of July. So they're starting to button up some things now. You're starting to see that. You know, the slurry cell project's going on, and that should be completed the last week of June. And this is one of those items that that was alluded to, is the Washington Parkway, the design options and detail estimates for the Washington Parkway. Now that is the road, and we looked at this several years ago, but it was quite cost prohibitive at the time. That's the road that will connect milepost 13 or Washington Parkway up to the Green Springs area. Again, part of the purpose of that is to alleviate some of the pressure on 10. We've had some different looks at some different designs and other things, and so those numbers are coming in as well, and so we should be able to come back to the council on those. And then just an update on the Green Springs substation. We passed around the spec sheets on the substation bids. We'll start putting those out probably around August, with a bid to occur in the fall, and then construction to occur and early fall, sorry, and then construction to occur. We should, if everything goes well, the substation would probably be online for us by the peak season next summer.
You know, I'd be curious at some point to know, as we work to alleviate the pressure on milepost 10 with Washington Parkway, is how many of those cars that are causing that congestion, both on the Green Springs side and the Telegraph side, how many of those cars go into those communities, or how many of those cars are always turning onto that frontage road left and not servicing the community? So as we make those decisions, I'm hoping what we're not doing is just redirecting all of that frontage road stuff right through the middle of Green Springs.
Well, as we've talked in months past and years past, is when, and Councilman Turek will know this as being part of the MPO, these planning processes are not just a planning process on one particular piece. They become very expansive to us. As a matter of fact, the Marl Drive underpass was with some intention. Now, we questioned it, but it was with some intention to bring some pressure off, that they anticipated to bring some pressure off the Green Springs intersection. But all these are looked at, so they model all these all the way from Washington Parkway to, you know, we're looking at some, we've looked for years, although it's not our city, and we'll be subject to St. George, is hopefully getting a road off that Walmart, that backside of Walmart, and then tie into the four-way stop, what'll eventually be a four-way stop at Costco, and alleviate that pressure that comes out of Walmart and hits 10. So that's another project. Now, of course, none of that's actually in our control, because it's all St. George from the back of Home Depot on. But again, we continue to work with St. George. I never can remember this street name that they just blew all the way through.
450 North.
450 North in St. George helps alleviate a little pressure. So these are very regional looks that they look at. So that's when we mentioned that we look at all aspects of trying to solve a problem. We truly do look at all aspects.
I think we do. It seems sometimes to me that, I think I don't want to make that statement, but I'm just hoping regionally we're looking at as many options as possible, because I think some of those are regional problems.
And I think that's why the larger agencies have been willing to help us wherever we need help. And I think, Mayor, that's it. Any questions?
Any questions for the manager? Not moving item 13 to adjourn.
I'll make that motion, we adjourn.
I'll second that one.
I'll move.
Each other.
That's right.
Nice night.
Been waiting for that one.